the advisor for your major, and he's like, well, you can do an internship, it would count as credit, you can take these self-study classes. This is before Zoom. So I did an internship, so I just Googled internships, and I ended up interning here at MetLife. We were on the 3rd floor at the time, and then internship over the summer, so in August I'm going back to school, and the managing director said, hey, if you want a job, when you're done, you have a job here. So I was done in December, I was done in December, I started working in January. I've been working here 2 weeks, and our recruiter came to me and said, would you want to talk to somebody on the phone that's interested in doing this job? And I'm thinking, okay, I'm 22 years old and I've been here 2 weeks, and you want me to tell somebody about this job? I said, sure, yeah. So anyway, it ended up being Nate that was on the phone that I was talking to about working here. So that's why I have 5 weeks seniority on Nate, because I brought him into this job, obviously. So I worked for MetLife for a while as an advisor. In 2008, I got married, we bought a house, the recession happened. So I left being an advisor, went to MetLife Securities. So if you ever care, securities basically just means investments. So this is the investment side of MetLife's house. I was in the back office in New Jersey, which is an absolute awful commute every day, driving to Island, New Jersey. So with some New Jersey commuters at some point, 78's a nightmare every day, no matter where you are on 78. So went to New Jersey for a while, and then Nate approached me in 2019. MetLife Securities was going to move to North Carolina. So they announced this at work, and I came home and I told my wife, and I said, so my job's moving to North Carolina. And she said no. So that meant I was applying for a new job and not moving to North Carolina, which probably worked out, well, it did work out anyway. So I went to BNY Mellon, which you may have heard of. Sometimes it's just BNYM. It's one of the biggest banks. Pershing is just an investment clearing firm. And then Nate approached me in 2019 if I would want to come back, because we had some familiarity. From these couple of years of working together, we actually shared an office together. Approached me if I would want to come back and help him with his business, as he had been in the business the entire time, had grown a rather larger clientele, was becoming somewhat unmanageable. Not that he's not capable, just the scope and breadth of his practice was so large, he needed some help with it. So I've been working back, as Nate says, on the dark side, which we say is the client-facing side, since 2019. So these roles, if you care to know this is doing advising, so meeting with clients. This is what we would call the back office. So if you meet with a client, you turn in applications. That goes to the back office where all the magic happens and the account numbers are assigned and it's rechecked and double-checked. And then this would be the client-facing side again. So it's a little bit of my history, my work history. I attend community in Coopersburg, if you know where that is. I do have 2 children. They are 11 and 14, a boy and a girl. Jackson, my son, is 11.
Kylie.
Wow. Kylie, my daughter, is 14. Yeah.
I'm here to help.
I live in Whitehall, Pennsylvania. I don't know. Anybody live in Whitehall? Anybody live near Whitehall? Okay, anybody heard of Whitehall? Anybody been to the mall? I live very close to the girls' vision. I see, you can raise your hand, it's okay, you've been to the mall. You know if you've been to the Whitehall Valley Mall?
They've been south.
So we live in Coopersburg, and I'm wondering, where is Community Baptist? Because I'm not familiar with it.
So, it's on Lineport Pike.
Okay.
So you turn right at Center Valley there, where 78, and then you go and drive past Wedgewood Golf Course, you know what it is, and it's down that road somewhere. It's an old elementary, yeah, I mean, it's 10 minutes down that road if that helps you, that's all I know, but it's an old elementary school. Some people who go to church there went to elementary school there, and then we bought this school from the township. But anyway, any questions about that other than where our church is, which I can't describe so well? Any questions for me?
What was your major at Maranatha for undergrad?
Sure. So a BBA is a bachelor's in business administration,
Okay.
and then you had to pick a certain concentration, which was like management, marketing, accounting, maybe operations was the 4th one. I had 0 interest in accounting, and I still have 0 interest in accounting. So I had a management emphasis is what mine was. Sure. Anything else? All right. So Nate referenced he has 2 kids. One of them is Ray, Nate referenced. He has a grandchild. That child is Ray's. So Ray is fresh off 0 sleep, very little downtime. Maybe he's happy back to work. So I will leave it to Ray now.
Yeah. Nice to meet all of you. My name is Ray. They brought me on the team for my punctuality. So a little bit about my background is I grew up coming to this office on Saturdays. And Dad would pull me out of bed. He's like, "Okay, I need you to help me out at the office." And I knew I wasn't making any plans for the rest of the day. We had files to go through. We had all these things. And I swore this career off for the longest time because I didn't think I was organized enough. I didn't think I was professional enough or even comfortable doing this job. But when I went to college, I went to a small college down in Langhorne that some of you may have heard of. It's called Cairn. It's a great university. I studied music there, so nothing pertaining to finance at all, really. But I studied music. I got a Bible degree. When I graduated there, I moved into Philadelphia. I was teaching music lessons at people's homes, knocking on people's doors, shaking hands, mostly elementary piano lessons, things of that nature, but really, really enjoyed the social aspect of that job. And it felt entrepreneurial. It felt like I was building clients. It felt like I was building rapport with my clients. So that was a really good time. It taught me a lot about work and kind of taught me that I wanted to do something in that vein, something social, something entrepreneurial, and something that I felt skilled in. So at that time I was also starting to lead worship at the church I was attending down in Philadelphia, Grace City Church of the Northeast. I did an internship there, I did a practicum there, and then when I graduated college they offered me a small part-time position. And so I got married and we bought a house, and now we have a kid, which is very new. That's 2 weeks ago we had a kid. So that's been a lot of fun, but how I got into this career specifically and what drew me to it, and maybe someone already said this, but there's 3 big reasons that I got into this. There's independence, there's income involved, and there's impact. It's easy to remember, 3 I's: independence, income, and impact. So every job is going to have some sort of spectrum of independence. So some jobs like this, you kind of make your own schedule. You work for yourself in a lot of ways. I just had a son, so I had a lot of people asking me, how much time did you get off for work? How much time did you get off for paternity leave and things like that? And I said, well, I don't really have PTO. I can actually take as much time as I want. I can take 3 weeks if I wanted to. Now, the onus is on me because I'm running a business here. I'm running a practice, so if I'm not working for 3 weeks, then I got to make sure I have stuff in the pipeline. But another job, you might have to request PTO, you might have to do FMLA, you might have to do all these other things. Independence is something that this career offers that I found really appealing. Another area that I found really appealing was the income aspect. I wanted a job that rewarded me for my hard work, not somebody else's schedule. I didn't want to wait in line for somebody to leave the company or retire and then take their position. I wanted something that I could grow into, something that I could own. And then of course impact. Hopefully all of us want to make this world a little bit better of a place, and I found that I found that this job offered me an opportunity to impact people in a lot of great ways. And so that was sort of like the big conversation going on in my mind that led me into this job. And Dad said, hey, why don't you take an interview here? I could probably get you an interview here if you wanted. And I was like, okay, I spent enough time swearing this job off, maybe I should just try it and see what happens. And then that was 2 years ago. And now we're here. And it's been a blast. It's been really, really rewarding, really fun at the same time, meeting a lot of great people. But that's sort of my story. Do you guys have any questions? It can be about music if you want. I can talk about music.
Any musicians here? Okay.
A lot of musicians, cool.
How does your music background benefit you think, in this career?
Yeah. So there's, so some of you may be familiar with music theory and things of that nature. Some of you may be familiar with harmonic analysis, like Roman numeral analysis, or Even the number system is something we talk about in music. So music has this reputation that this is sort of like this very free art. There's actually a lot of science behind the art. And studying music from 300 years ago, like Bach or Handel and things like that, illuminates the aspect that music is actually very orderly and very numbers oriented. There's actually a lot that math can teach us about music. And so I do think that there's a aspect to my music education that carried over into this, just being familiar with numbers, being familiar with balance and harmony and things like that. But on the maybe a little more practical side, learning how to listen is a big skill in this industry because you're talking with clients all the time and you have to be a good listener. Music teaches us to be good listeners because we're listening to music, we're listening to other people play. I came from a jazz background, and so there's a lot of improvisation in that field. That really rewarded me with a skill set of conversing well, listening to other people deeply, not just as a waiting for my turn to speak, but actually trying to understand where this person is and where they're coming from. And that's a really important skill for this business, because that's what we're doing every day when we meet with clients. So I would say that's probably two big things that music taught me about this career. Anything else?
You might get into it, but are all three of you the same position in terms of financial services executive, or do you all have a slightly different role here at the firm?
So we all are in some way on the same level. Now obviously there's an experience factor. So me having 2 years of experience versus Nate and Chris having 20, that's a little bit different. We're all gifted in different ways. I like to think I bring the sense of humor to the practice. Chris has the brains. I don't know what Dad knows.
Raw charm and charisma.
Right. So, yeah, but we all, so we'll work on cases together. We'll do joint work. Maybe we'll have 3 of us in a meeting. Most of the time it's only 2. But we're constantly talking with each other about, hey, I saw this, I had a client that had this, what do you think of that? A lot of that is me asking for advice. And so, but we're also building individual practices, especially I'm at a stage where I'm really focused on building, where Nate, who's getting closer to retirement, potentially.
It's news to Nate.
Trying to push me out.
Closer than I am, right? He's closer to retirement than I am. He's thinking about clients a little bit differently. He's thinking about what's going to get me to this point, or how am I using my time most effectively. Versus me, I tell people I take ABC clients. What market do you work in, Ray? Who do you work with? And I say I work with ABC clients, alive, breathing, and conscious. So, yeah, we do different things. We have different specialties. We have different interests, but we all do the same job essentially.
If I just add a comment to that, if you broke our firm down into certain segments, right, you'd have senior leadership, you have our sales directors, and then you have a chunk of advisors, and then you have staff, right? So Nate, Ray, and I would all be advisors. So that's what Nate referenced. We have 250 advisors. That's not including senior leadership, all the C-blank-O, right? CMO, CEO, COO, everything else. So all these advisors then would basically own your own practice, right? You own your own book of business. You work with the clients you want to, but they're all the same level of advisors. Some may call themselves planners, some may call themselves investment advisors, some can call themselves FSRs or financial services executives. But that role is all still the same role of advising.
Thank you.
Sure.
So yeah, that's about me. Anything else? Any burning questions? Can move on. I believe we have another segment.
Yes, thank you. Hi everybody, Sarah Holtzman. I am the Practice Development Specialist, also called the PDS for our firm. So I do quite a lot, as Nate said. I handle all of our reporting. I create custom reports in Excel. I've also built like an Excel program to train up the staff as well. So along those layers Chris said, there's 80 staff. So I trained up almost all 80 staff of those in Excel, created a program going from basics of how to use it. I also do treat that with sales assistants, so in case they don't know Excel, I will share that with them as well. Advisor 360, that is our CRM platform. So like if you go to a doctor's office, a dentist, and you tell them your name and they pull it up, that's the software system that I manage and I troubleshoot all of that. So that is called our CRM platform. It's just where you store all of your notes, all of your information. I also handle the training calendar for the advisors. So there's 252 advisors. I handle all of those invites. I get them sent out. And then there's also other small areas. I do reception twice a week, which I do love that. I can handle the coffee order. I'm a big coffee person, so I love stocking the coffee, making sure the coffee is available. So that is something I do enjoy. I went to Boyertown in 2016, so 10 years ago is when I graduated. That's actually where I grew up. I grew up there. Now I live in Perkiomen. My husband and I moved out there when we got married. So my senior year of high school, I did not know what I wanted to do. I didn't have like a college picked out or a career path. My older brother, he was going to Kutztown University, and that's ultimately where I went. I wanted to know, my older brother was there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Kutztown. They have, or at least they did, they had a Chick-fil-A on campus, and I love Chick-fil-A. So we would meet up for lunch just about every single Monday, which I love that. I also didn't have like a specific major or something that I wanted to study. I liked doing accounting, I liked doing finance in high school, but I really wasn't good at it. I didn't get all A's in it, so I figured that's probably not the way to go. So I also was contemplating being a nurse. I did like the field in that, but I passed out with needles, so that's definitely not the right option to go. So my dad mentioned, you know, maybe try business. You can do a lot with a business degree, so that's what I did. I went to Kutztown, I commuted, I lived 35 minutes away. I also worked part-time at Giant in Gilbertsville, which I love doing that. I love working part-time. I was a big saver, so I was ultimately saving money to eventually buy a house. So I really wasn't too interested in living on campus, and also I did tour the campus, tour the dorms. They were okay. I was contemplating it, but a big deal breaker for me, the dorm I would be in didn't have AC, and I really like my air conditioner. So, and the dorms can get up to like 90, 95, that specific dorm. I didn't want to deal with that, so I definitely commuted. So that's what I did. I went to Kutztown. And then I did business administration, so it was also management, operations, so it really covered a lot of areas. There was like an HR course, which was pretty good. I did like that one as well. Towards my last semester of college, I did not have a job lined up. I didn't have anything lined up. I didn't know a specific career or a company that I wanted to narrow down on. So my dad had actually asked the pastor of our church, we used to go to Salem, he asked him if he knew like any business owners, anyone that was hiring for an internship. So he ended up asking around. I did apply for internships on my own. I was also late in the season, so a lot of stuff was already full. I wasn't really getting what I wanted. There were a few where I applied for them, got to the interview stage, and I just didn't like what it was going to do. Like, it was a different career path than what I wanted. It was also different than what they kind of advertised it to be. So the pastor of the church connected me with somebody that was here. She is now retired, so she's not here anymore. But she did get me connected with a really nice boss. She's unfortunately not here either. She went to a different role. So the summer of 2019, I did an internship here through the summer. I was still at college. That was my last semester. I ended up taking 6 courses instead of the normal 5. I don't know why I did that. I think just because I could take 6, I did it. I ended up being able to graduate a semester early, which was actually pretty cool. So I graduated right before COVID hit. We could still have the graduation. It was in December of 2019. It's much smaller, so you know, the graduation ceremony, instead of being hours and hours, it was actually like an hour or 2, which I loved it because I don't want to sit there for hours. So I did my internship here the full summer. They actually, my boss, she fought to keep me on part-time. So when everyone else was done the internship, I stayed part-time doing 32, 34 hours a week while still going to college. At that time, I did leave Giant so that way I could pursue the internship. So that's where I did stop working at Giant so I can work here instead. And it's, I think, relatively close to Kutztown. So I would stack my classes on like 2 or 3 days a week. So that way I could still go to class. And I also loved, especially doing the night classes. So it was 1 3-hour session a week instead of like 2 or 3, 2 times in the week, which most of the time for the classes, the professor was already like tired for the whole session. They wanted to go home. They didn't want to be there until 9 o'clock at night. So they would end early. They would just cancel it, which I did like. And there was also a Starbucks on campus, so I could, of course, go get my coffee before class. So I could work here in the morning and drive straight to Kutztown for my classes at night. So I did that. After I graduated, I worked part-time 1.5 years until full-time was available. We didn't yet merge with this other firm, so budgeting was a little bit limited, so I was waiting for a budget to get approved. So after the 1.5 years, I was finally given a full-time position January of 2021. So along doing my normal stuff, and what I was doing I should have mentioned earlier, we were in the process of moving from one CRM platform. So that's like when you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor's office and you tell them your name and they pull it up in the system. We were moving from one platform to another. So I had to work with, at that time it wasn't 252 advisors, it was probably 130, maybe that. So I was working with all those advisors to get all the information formatted for that conversion, which was a lot of work, which I loved doing it. And then I also did other like data entry stuff, little tidbits here and there. So to get me that full-time position, they gave me that additional, I was only working 34 hours, that additional 5 or 6 hours a week working with new business. So if you have like a life insurance policy and you need to update your address, change a beneficiary, maybe you have like a general question, advisors would come to me, I would call the carrier, call home office, and figure out, get the questions answered and kind of be the middleman for that. So I did that for a couple months, and then in May of 2021, another person had left the firm. She moved on to a different role, something with her career path changed. They gave me the training calendar to take over. So that took up quite a bit of time getting that reissued, re-prepping all of it, getting all the new invites. So I send the invites to all the 252 advisors that we have. So I make sure when they're coming on new. So for example, when Ray came on, I made sure I had all those invites and sent them to him. And then I also manage events. So if we do like an all-day event, maybe we do a Take Your Child to Work Day event or something, I coordinate all the stuff on the back end. I make sure there's of course the coffee there, make sure there's some bagel items or something that's there for them. And then of course lunch. Make sure that's all prepped in the back end. So in April of 2022, my boss that I worked with really well got me connected here. She fought really hard to get me promoted, encourage my growth. She had transitioned to a new role. She went a different career path. So I took over her role. We were doing pretty much the same exact thing. So I just did my role and then her additional work on top of it. So I did that for probably like a year or so. I loved it. I reported directly to our head of operations. So I dipped my toes in more of like the payroll, getting advisors paid with their paychecks, which I love doing. So I do have a heavy hand on that. I run all of the reports for that, make sure the advisors are getting paid the correct amount, and of course, sending that over so they do get paid. January of 2023, they also proposed an additional support role. So I do my same role, but now I do reception twice a week. So there's 3 of us girls and we rotate different days. So like I said, I love doing reception. I do the coffee order, make sure we've got all the K-cups. Like there's a lot of brands. I've got Starbucks and Dunkin'. I love it. So I take care of all that stuff. And then also, along doing that, I did help with some IT stuff. So we don't have, well we do now, we don't have an IT on site. So I would help advisors with, getting prepped for meetings like this. Maybe their laptop has a little something going on. I help with that. I don't do too much with that. I'm just a backup for that in case our IT person's not in Allentown that day. And then in July of 2025, we merged with another firm, so that's how we got our 252 advisors. My title did change to practice development specialist, but I'm doing the exact same thing. Nothing changed. If anything, it's just a lot more advisors to work for and to assist with them. And then October, November of 2025, one of our sales managers approached me and asked temporarily if I would help fill in for his assistant. His assistant was leaving and he needed a quick a quick person to jump in. So I was temporarily going to help him out. So I did learn a lot of the business for the side that the advisors are on, like submitting the apps, all that stuff that they do with the clients. So I do 4 hours a week working for a rep, which I love. I couldn't do it full time, but I do love helping 4 hours a week. So I do that on top of my normal 40. And they'll go over it a little bit, I am salary instead of commission. So I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. I personally love that. I like knowing all my bills are going to be paid. And I like knowing the same amounts coming in each time, which is different for everybody. Everyone has a different preference on what they like. And that is about it. Any questions anybody may have? Okay.
So I just want to point something out. Sarah's a great example when you guys get a job of doing anything she can do, learning it all, and then that in turn makes her more valuable to the firm, right? She knows so much about so many different things. I'm trying to think what this saying is. Jack of all trades, master of none, right? She knows enough about it. Knows a little about enough things that she has really expanded what she's done here. And she left out, and I figured she would leave out, that she's going to speak at the Mass Mutual National Conference in May, which is a huge deal from interning in 2019 to speaking at the Mass Mutual Conference, like the company-wide, nationwide conference in Boston in May. So kudos to Sarah for your 7 minutes of fame that you're going to have doing your PDS segment up there, but good for you.
Yeah, so in May, our home office picked me amongst all the other PDS for the East region, so there's, I don't know, maybe 60 of us. They specifically asked if I can come in and participate on a reporting platform, show other people in my role how I'm using it. So I'm going to be going up to Boston in May. I'll do like a 2-hour session up there, so I'm super excited for that.
Good job, Sarah.
My team gets a little anxious when I go off script. Bear with me here. Those of you taking notes, which is maybe one of you, I encourage you to do that. And let's just recap for a minute here. What were some of the takeaways? You heard 3 stories here. So you, as just a little bit younger, what can you apply from what you just heard? Just any kind of lessons, bullet points. What were some of the things that Chris or Ray or Sarah said about how they got to their career path? How they ended up where they are now? They all seem to be pretty happy with where they are, hopefully. What were some of the individual, go ahead.
You don't have to decide exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're 17 years old.
Perfect.
Yep, great answer. Great answer. Yeah, we can all speak to that, I think all 4 of us, and how we ended up where we are. What else? Ray mentioned, and he mentioned it briefly, but he mentioned there's 3 words that start with the letter I. I'm going to come back to them in a bit, but anybody remember what any of them were? And you should write these down because they pertain particularly to this career, but I think to any career path you have. There's 3 things you want to be looking for. Anybody remember any of them? Income, right? Write these down. Capital I, NC, OME. All right, anybody remember any more?
Independence.
Independence.
Capital I.
Capital I, forget the rest, okay? That was a big deal 250 years ago, by the way, if you know your history. Okay. Income, independence, what was the last one? Impact. Capital I. So focus on, we'll, again, I'll mention again, the others might as well as we're going through this, but where can you have, those types of aspects in your career, and then how do you leverage them outside of your career to your advantage, with your family or with your church or any organizations you're a part of? What about at least two of the individuals, well, I think just two of them, because I didn't and Ray didn't, but what did both Chris and Sarah do before they started here full-time?
Internships?
Internships. Everybody familiar with that? Who can tell me what an internship is? It's not one of the I words, but capital I. What's an internship? Anyone? Bueller? I've only seen that movie. Anybody want to take a shot at what an internship is?
It's like learning and you're not getting paid usually.
Yeah, that's, I think we do pay our interns a little bit, but.
Yep,
yeah,
get
but-
paid.
But yeah, you're right, you're just kind of experiencing a career on a limited basis. We do have a formal program, and I think we have a pretty good program here with the interns, from what I've seen of it, the interns we've worked with, where you actually do get paid, and you get some training, you get some licenses, you're working with a senior advisor, so you can get a good taste of the career, and so it's definitely an opportunity. So any career path you're thinking of, you can kind of test the proverbial waters, say, is this something for me? On an even more limited basis, this wasn't brought up, but you could even, if you have an interest in a career and you know somebody who's in that field, an adult, it could be one of your parents, could be somebody else, but you could even shadow them for a day or for a week. And come to the office with me, or whatever, and just kind of get a sense of what the day in the life is like. So again, something you should look at. If there's an interest in that career, I think most people, if they have a positive experience in their own career, they're happy to share that with younger people, give them some experience, just in that regard.
I have a question. So do you have to be at a certain point in your college career to apply for an internship, or like is there an age? What does that look like?
Sarah, you want to answer that?
No, you don't have to. So some colleges, they require an internship to graduate. When I went, it was optional, so I went for the internship, didn't do like the binder, the packet, but I believe when I was leaving, they were suggesting doing an internship before your senior year of college, so before then.
Is our
Yeah.
program doesn't they apply to sophomores?
I believe we
Rising
do,
seniors, rising juniors?
yeah, we'll do any of them. We bring in about 30 to 40 interns. We pay for them to get licensed, so that doesn't come out of your own pocket. The company will pay for it. There's also other opportunities. Maybe you don't want to be an advisor. You can intern with a staff, like you could intern with me. You can intern with somebody else. You could probably try multiple areas if that's something you were interested in, just kind of see what you liked.
I think any industry, that's another important lesson there, any industry is going to have, obviously, the professionals like Chris and Ray and myself who are actually doing the production, if you will, or in a medical practice, the doctors that are actually seeing the patients. But behind every doctor, every financial advisor, there's going to be multiple levels of support personnel, multiple levels of management in some cases, that give that company or that organization some infrastructure. So you may intern as an advisor in our business and say, well, I like the industry, but I don't really want to do that, but I can have a supporting role in marketing and compliance and practice development, administrative support, things of that nature. In my previous life, I was a marketing director at an architecture firm. You can read about that in my memoirs. But as I was there, to be an architect, by the way, I'll just share this real quick. In Pennsylvania, to be a licensed architect, you go to college for 5 years. It's a 5-year degree, 5-year bachelor's degree. It's called Bachelor of Architecture. And then you have to intern for 5 years, and then paid or unpaid, and then you take a 40-hour exam. So not exactly an easy thing to become a registered architect, and that's, states are a little different, but that's typical in most states. Engineer is similar to that, any of those building design professions. We had one of my colleagues who, he had done all that, he was a registered architect, but he decided to specialize in IT. So he was our go-to person for CAD design and setting up the computers and everything else. So he was able to take his, the CEO of our company basically did no design work at all, he was just busy running the company. So you can deviate off into different aspects of leadership or otherwise within an organization, and that's something I think, again, if you like the career path, just keep in mind, you don't necessarily have to be an architect or a doctor or a financial advisor. You can be any number of things within that industry. One commonality, two more things I'll mention, but you cannot be afraid, I think, in any career path, but certainly in the types of things we're talking about, work and diligence and preparedness is an important part of any career. And you want to be prepared to work hard, you want to be prepared to learn, and learn from your mistakes, learn from what you see around you, learn from senior people in the profession and so forth. So be prepared to do that. And this was raised in one of the questions, but that we have 3 advisors on our team, and we all are basically similarly licensed and have different levels of experience, but we also have our own specializations. And Chris has a certain role. We share a lot of our clients. I might be lead on some, Chris might be lead on some, Ray might be lead on some, but we have different roles in following up on that business and in managing those accounts, and I think largely complementary skills. So in any organization, any career path you choose, be conscious of the team concept. And if you've played sports at all, you know that you can't, whatever sport you want to pick, you can't all be the quarterback, you can't all be the point guard. You have to have different complementary skills. When I coached basketball years ago, I didn't always put my 5 best players out. I was looking for the 5 that would work together in that setting. Somebody who could handle the ball, somebody who could shoot, somebody who could be in the middle and rebound, and things like that. So you're looking for complementary skills, not just in sports, but in any profession you would choose. Questions or comments on that? And I'll go back on script here. But, go ahead.
I have a lot of questions, sorry.
That's
So
okay.
if you share businesses or clients and you're all independent financial reps, how do you share the income for those then based on the amount of investment you have for each of those cases?
Yeah, very good question. So we have a somewhat simplified yet occasionally convoluted way that between the 3 of us that we will split commissions, basically. And that's something that can be changed in certain cases as we go along, but we have kind of a set schedule for that. And then depending on different factors, we can change from that. I would say, again, in the industry 20 years, as has Chris, I've seen a lot of teams that were formed, and I've seen a lot of them fall apart over, what do you think?
Yeah, money.
Money. We're all commission-based, so dollars can be very important, and certainly they are. We're not dismissing that. But it's important that when you are teaming up with people, that you have people that share the same set of values and have the same understanding of each other and can work together. There's been times I might have needed a boost in a certain area, or Chris did, or Ray did. And we try to make it as fair as we can, within the framework we have. But the bottom line for us is not commissions, it's the integrity of the organization and the integrity of the team. And that, I think, is probably the overriding factor in any organization. I've spoken about that many times, not in this setting, unfortunately, but if you're a part of a church, for example, which I think most of you are, or even a class like this, keeping that organization on the same page and moving in the same direction and using those complementary skills for the greater good, that is more important than anything financial or really anything else at all. The money, you can figure out the money later. But having a strong organization is, I think, paramount to anything else. Long answer, but that helps. Anything else? All right. So I'm kind of on that note. I've just got a couple slides here, but when we talk about work, and there's a lot of stuff in social media and in the media in general decrying, whether it's capitalism or the work ethic and so forth, and why we do what we do. Can anybody think of anything from the Bible that may pertain to work, being diligent? When I was about 15 years old, I got a job. There was a youth, I was living outside Washington, D.C. at the time. There was a major conference coming to town focused on youth. I did not attend as an attendee, but we found out that the people who were selling the recordings of, had dozens of speakers selling the recordings, they needed some help putting all that together. So I go, oh, cool, I can do that. So I show up the first day at the D.C. Convention Center, and I'm going at it, and the next day I'm like, I kind of lose the enthusiasm right away. My father said to me, he actually, I called him during the day, that second day, how's it going? And he said, well, I'm working hard. And he said, as unto the Lord. So we certainly work for our colleagues and we work for our clients and we work for our families, but who are we ultimately working for? In Colossians 3:23, I have this verse on my desk. Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men. And whatever your level of faith is, and I'm assuming that's something we have in common, but even if not, I mean that's a pretty good objective to have. What is the larger goal here? What is the larger picture? Who am I ultimately working for? So that to me is the key verse, as is this verse in Matthew, which, again, and there's dozens of verses, if not hundreds, in the Bible about being faithful and being diligent and following through on things. But Matthew 5:16, you've heard this. It was, again, a very familiar verse. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good work and glorify whom? Your Father which is in heaven. So I think that's a key lesson as you're preparing for your careers. Yes, we want to work to support our families and support our colleagues and our companies and the people around us, but ultimately, who are we working for? And that mindset, I think, helps you get through setbacks and challenges in whatever career path you have. Because you will have, hard as it may believe, because we have them from time to time, right? We will occasionally have a bad day. And we will occasionally have things that don't go the way we planned. Have you experienced that?
Handful of times, yeah.
Handful of times. And whether it's with a client or with a colleague, or it's certainly not among the three of us, but it sounds like, okay, what in the world am I doing here? And you will have that in every profession. You talk to any adult you know, they will have frustrating days, but you keep in mind, and again, this goes back to the earlier question, am I concerned more about the dollars, about the commission, about my paycheck, or am I concerned about what I'm doing career-wise and who I'm serving? So those are two lessons. Again, there's many others. I just picked those two. I'd like to tell you a quick story about someone you may have heard of, or maybe your grandparents have heard of, and maybe your parents have heard of. So again, my name's Nathan. I was named after three people. I was named after an ancestor of mine named Nathan Harding. He fought in the Revolutionary War with General Washington. And through him, I am related to a maybe not as famous American, President Warren Harding, who died in 1923 under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Not necessarily something to brag about if you know your history, but I did check the ancestry. We are ninth cousins once removed, whatever that means. So through him, I'm related to President Harding. What can you do? I was also named after a figure you might be a little bit more familiar with, Nathan the prophet in the Old Testament. Everybody remember him? He has a very scene where he confronts a very important person. Anybody remember that?
Thou art the man.
Who does Nathan go to and say, "Thou art the man"? He was kind of important at the time. Starts with a D. David. King David, most powerful man probably in the known world at that time, who had got a little crazy with one of his neighbors, his neighbor's wives to be specific. And Nathan the prophet, at, I would think, great personal risk, goes and confronts King David. The third person I was named after is this gentleman here, Nathaniel Nate Saint. And he was a missionary. And he was born in Pennsylvania. He was born near Hershey, grew up outside Philadelphia. Born in 1923, he served briefly in the Army during World War II. Went to Wheaton College, some of you might have heard of, out in Illinois. And he had an interest, he was always a tinkerer, he was always inventing. I have his biography here. This is one of the best books I've ever read. It's called Jungle Pilot. It was based largely on his diaries and recollection of his family. It's an excellent book. And he's called the inventive genius of the operation, that I'll explain in a minute. Just a really smart guy, and he was fascinated by air travel. So again, you know your history at all. We get through World War II, and commercial air travel, pardon the expression, is taking off, right? And air travel is becoming a big thing. We obviously used it a little bit in World War I, World War II. It's a major factor in the Allies winning World War II. We're just dominant towards the end of the war. And so now the war's over. And we have all this aircraft, and people see the miracle of air travel, and so now commercial air travel is a big thing. So this Nate Sink guy, he wants to be a pilot. He could have, and he had many opportunities that you can read about, where he could have been a commercial pilot. And at that stage in history, even like today, you could basically, as an airline pilot, you could name your own price. They were so desperate for qualified people to fly commercial airlines. He could have made a very nice living. And he could have had a nice, comfortable home, raised his family, lived in Pennsylvania or wherever else, and had a great career. And nobody would have questioned that. Why would you? He had the skills, he had the ambition, he wanted to do that. He decided instead that he wanted to be a missionary. And he pioneered, he was the first, you can see the names there, but he was the first of that cadre of missionaries to go to Ecuador and start establishing this contact with this Auca tribe in Ecuador, unreached people, and getting the initial contact. And he was joined by some of his colleagues there. You can see their names, Jim Elliott, Keith Fleming, and Macaulay, and Roger Yudarian. And they established kind of a beachhead there, and then they started making contact with the tribe. The tribe's unreachable by land, so they have to use aircraft just to make contact. And he even invented a way, there's no helicopters there. He's able to lower a basket from an airplane to the village down below. Can you imagine how complicated that is in an airplane? He developed a way that he could circle around the village and lower a basket or a bucket on a rope. How in the world does that happen? But he figured it out. And he would calculate, the fuel they needed and the supplies and everything else. It's an incredible story. And again, if you can get a copy of this book, you can't have this one. But if you can get a copy of the book, there is an updated version. I'd encourage you to read it. It's a fascinating story. But he goes off to become a missionary, and his friends, his peers at the time, they're like, Nate, you're crazy. You could have all of this stateside. You could have a nice salary, a nice home, a nice family. Why in the world would you waste your life going off to see people who you have never seen before, you will never see again, who don't speak your language, and there's all kinds of risk involved. You're just wasting your life. And even now I get somewhat emotional reading this. I have this quote on my desk, and when I graduated high school back in the last century, well into the last century, we were given a full page in the yearbook. It was a small school, and I put this quote, actually the full quote, on the page. And he says, people who do not know the Lord ask why in the world we would waste our lives as missionaries. This is a key part here. They forget that they too are expending their lives. And they forget that when the years have passed and the bubble has burst, they will have nothing of eternal significance to show for the years they have wasted. That is powerful stuff. That is powerful stuff. And as you're planning your career, we had a gentleman in our industry, in fact, I talked to him not too long ago, a guy named Joe Jordan, and he would come around to various offices, including this one. He stood right here, and he talked about living a life of significance. He reads this poem at the end. It's very powerful in terms of what you can do to be significant in your own life. What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. What will matter is not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. And he goes on in that vein, and that's certainly valid thoughts. But let's emphasize that a degree further and say it's not just living significantly, but living of eternal significance. So again, as you're planning your careers, what can I do, whatever profession I'm in? Certainly it could be in ministry, certainly it could be in the work that we do here. Any profession, any career, what am I doing that is of eternal significance? I was in on Sunday, this past Sunday, I was invited to a university up north of here where I know some of the members of the football team and some of the coaches. They invited me to be on a career panel. I ended up not sitting on the panel. They had 7 people for a 40-minute panel. That was way too many. So I did not join, which was fine. I sat there and I took some notes, and they asked these 5 or 6 questions. I'm not going to go through all these. Like you can see them. We could spend an hour on each of these in terms of career planning and career guidance. We're not going to do that. We don't have the time. You're all starting to fall asleep, and we're going to have lunch soon, and we've got more speakers coming up here. But that first question came up. And what does a winning career mean to you? And we could all come up with an answer for that. Certainly the adults could. Certainly the 3 of us could. What does a winning career mean? And I'm sitting there taking notes, and the first person who spoke said basically, well, follow your heart, follow your passion, do something you enjoy. And I thought, well, maybe. Does the Bible say, follow your heart? Did Jesus say, follow your heart, follow your passion? What did Jesus say to follow? Follow him, follow me. And you could find a career path that maybe is fulfilling to you, and financially or otherwise. That was really where they were going with that. But are you finding a career that has the eternal significance that Nate Saint talked about? So I understood the answer, and then the others on the panel gave a variation of that. And that's fine in a secular sense, but we have to have maybe a broader view of what we're doing with our careers and how we're going to build that out. Yes, we want to support our families and so forth, but we certainly want to be able to say, at the end when we're looking at retirement, and I'm not looking at retirement in spite of what certain people in this room might say from time to time, but as we're getting through our lives, and we look back and say, what did I do that was of significance and of eternal significance? And so they went through those other questions, which I won't talk about right now, and at the end they had a few minutes for taking questions. There was a young man sitting 2 seats away from me. He kept raising his hand, but they didn't call on him, and then they ran out of time. So I turned to him afterwards, and this is a young man, he's on the East Stroudsburg football team, and I said, hey, what was your question? Out of curiosity. And his question was that last one there, should I pursue what makes me the most money or something that I'm passionate about? And this goes back to maybe the question that was raised earlier, but what do you think, in a way, he's kind of wrong on both counts. But my one response to him was, I'm probably going to come up with something better if I thought about it, but if you're going into a career simply because you can make a lot of money doing it, you will find yourself at a dead end. You will never make enough money to make up for all the aggravation. When I was a teenager, I was talking to one of my peers, a young lady. She says, I want to be a defense attorney because they make a lot of money. I'm like, well, you'll see how long that lasts. You hang around people who need defense attorneys, you're going to feel like you need a shower every 20 minutes. But just as an objective, okay, not because it makes the most money. You could make a lot of money as like the gentleman was a football player. You want to go to the NFL, you'll make $15 million a year. Hey, that's wonderful, right? Until you see the consequences of that as a career path. Always traveling, always training, always away from your family. Never established, not a whole lot of job security. And even in the NFL, very little financial security. Contracts are not guaranteed. You can get hurt and injured and your career could be over. We all know that, athletes that's happened to. And so there were conversations growing up where they said, well, I want to be a musician, I want to be a rock star or something. They make a lot of money. Well, they do, but in this day and age where you can download any music you want for 15 cents, the only way that the musicians make money at a high level, they have to keep touring all the time. They have to keep traveling. They're away from home more often than not, because that's the only way they get any revenue is through live performances. They're looking to break even on anything else. So any number of careers, your number one motivation should not be financial. Yes, you should find what you're passionate about, and yes, you should find what you're good at, and that may evolve over time, as it has for the three of us. But it should not be about financial. What are we trying to do, who are we serving, and what's going to best serve our family, and what's going to be of eternal significance. Questions, comments, complaints? Sit down, Mr. Chairman. We've had enough. All right. That's all I have for now. My valued colleague Chris is going to take over and then wrap up towards the end. And Ray will have some things too.
So I think we've done 4 or 5 of these, and I was your age at one point, and I know you have an attention span so long, so we're all going to stand up right now. All you kids, sorry, you don't have to. All you kids sitting on these tables over here are going to stand up whenever you're ready. So you're going to tell me your first and last name. You're going to tell me if your mother is here in the back, just as pure curiosity, and what grade you're in, and one more interesting thing about you. I mean, anything you want to be. But this is nothing to do with what I'm going to say. This is just curiosity and keeping you all awake. So unfortunately, you sat in the first spot, so you're going to go first.
I'm Catherine O'Connor. My mom is here. I'm in 9th grade, and I play musical instrument.
What?
Violin.
Catherine? Catherine's mom? All right, hello, Catherine's mom. You can have a seat, Catherine, thank you. Next.
I'm Diana O'Connor.
Diana. Is that, you spell that?
D-I-A-N-N-A.
Oh, so it sounds, looks like Diana, but it's Diana.
But with 2 N's.
Interesting, very nice.
I'm in 9th grade and I play the clarinet, the piano, and I'm in choir and I'm off.
In the green?
No, over here.
Oh, the one not standing. All right, Diana, thank you.
I'm Hannah Klein. I'm in 9th grade. That's my mom.
Oh, purple, all right.
And I play softball and volleyball.
Nice, all right.
My name is Matt Ingram and I'm in 5th grade. My mom's back there.
Okay.
I play ukulele.
Do you really? I wish I knew what that was. Is that the little guitar thing? Okay. So I can tell you everything I know about music in probably less than 60 seconds. So this is all foreign languages to me. I do know who you are, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Nicoletta. My mom decided has to be here because she's the class tutor. And I play drums and that.
You played or you play?
I play.
Oh, all right. All right. Well done, Nicolette.
I'm Sam Landis, that's my mom,
All right.
and I'm 9th grade, and I'm a certified lifeguard, and I do choir with her.
Do you lifeguard somewhere?
I just got certified a month ago, so it hasn't hit our season yet.
Okay. Are you planning to lifeguard somewhere?
Yeah, thank you.
Where?
I'm planning on doing it at Meadowland.
Meadowland?
Meadowland.
Like where the Giants and Jets play?
No, Meadowland. And then I also go to a camp, Greenwood Hills. You probably don't know it.
Yeah.
I don't know if she goes to it, but I'm a lifeguard there too.
You have a
Good news
bathtub?
if you drown. Was it Sam?
What's up?
Sam.
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 Yeah.
Seth will not be there, but Sam will be there. Don't be shy.
Lost my voice.
Okay.
I play the alto saxophone, piano, and I sing. And my mom's good there.
Okay. The alto saxophone. And what was the second thing you said?
Piano.
Piano. Okay. Wow. Musical group. Good job, bud.
I'm Jonathan Ingram. My mom's right there.
There's another Ingram. Hold on. Don't tell me. Oh, she told me.
And I like playing soccer.
That's my soccer. What grade are you in?
8th.
8th grade. Okay.
I'm Helen O'Connor. I'm in 11th grade. My mom is here. And I like to sew.
Like to sew. So there's another O'Connor here. Don't tell me this. It's one used to over here, though. You.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Thank you.
I am Sophia Alpona. My mom is back there.
There's another one of you here. There's two. Oh, I'm losing track, but I'll figure it out. Go ahead.
I'm in 11th grade and I like to draw and write.
Nice. All right. Ohana?
Alhona.
Oh. Is it you? Is it you? All right. Again, that was totally unrelated to what I'm talking about. But that might buy me 20 more minutes of attention span here. So, I'm going to try and talk about some avenues of what you will do. Oh, I forgot to, there's 3 girls in the back. I don't leave you out of it. Are you part of this group, or are you just?
Yes,
Oh my goodness.
three of them.
Well, stand back up, you 3. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. On the left there.
I'm Rachel Ingram. I'm in 7th grade. My mom is right here. And I love smiley faces.
No, smiley faces, good. Well, you're smiling now, so that's, you're doing well. And you're an Ingram. Is there another one? I feel like there is. It's you. There we go. Good.
My name is Esther Ingram.
Oh my goodness. At least I know your siblings are right there, right there, right there.
You gotta have multiple kids.
And I'm in 6th grade. And
The Johnston's are.
I like to craft.
Correct. Such as,
Crocheting, knitting, sewing.
okay. So you are in 6th grade, and you are in 5th grade, and you're in 8th grade, and you're in 7th grade? Wow. That's right, keeping right in line. Are you an Ingram?
Right?
Okay. In 4th grade. Oh, good.
I'm in 6th grade and I like to act.
To act. All right. There is no O'Connor here, and I'm completely lost now. You're smiling awfully big. Yeah, this one. All right, good. All right, thank you all in the back there. Did not mean to leave you out. All right. So I want to know if anybody here knows what you want to do for a job when you grow up. And I'm not being sarcastic. If anybody has any inkling, I'd be happy to hear it. Some of you are fairly young to even know. I remember when I was growing up, I loved football, I loved the Eagles, and I thought I was going to play in the NFL. I specifically like Reggie White, because he was a minister, he was a Christian, so I was like, oh, I'm going to play in the NFL. Turns out, A, I'm white, B, I'm not that big, C, I'm not that strong, D, I'm not that athletic, so here I am. So again, this was my dream, and for how many years until reality hit. Anybody have any idea what they want to do when they grow up? You can all, you don't have to. I'm not going to wait for 25 minutes, but somebody's like, yeah, I'm dead set on being a firefighter, I'm dead set on going to outer space, or you keep looking at her like she should have an answer. Like, go ahead, tell them.
I would love to go into fashion and costumes for theater or something, but I'm also interested in psychology.
Theater and psychology, there's two creative avenues for sure. Okay. And you doing that like sewing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go hand in hand. Anybody else willing to face public scrutiny? No? Okay, you don't have, all right, I like it. O'Connor.
I want to be a kindergarten teacher.
Really? Bless your heart. I could not. Well, good for you. Anybody else? We have a teacher, we have costume designer. Okay, you don't have to, it's fine. You guys have time. Some of us are still trying to figure out what we want to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple aspects, but I want to preface it with what I think about my job. I will tell you in all honesty that I absolutely love what I do. There's a saying out there, if you like what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Anybody ever hear that? Anybody explain what that means? It's kind of contradicting. If you're working, then you're working. So how can you, if you love what you do and never work a day in your life, basically you will enjoy it so much it won't feel like work. So I do love what I do. I can honestly say this, that I would not do anything else other than what I do right now. I would honestly and confidently say if my manager came to me and said, Chris, we'd like you to become the CEO of Mass Mutual, I would turn it down. I would lose all my freedom. I would lose all my convenience of scheduling. I'd be tied up in meetings all day, and I've developed a great abhorrence of meetings. So I wouldn't take it. I really wouldn't play in the NFL. I'd probably die. But again, the traveling, you're all over the place, you never see your family, again, you're in no control of your schedule or anything. So keep that in mind as I go through all this. This was not what I've done, was not what I've done most of my life, but it's not what I landed on right away, but it's absolutely what I love to do. And if you can find a job that you absolutely love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. So being an employee versus being an entrepreneur. What does being an entrepreneur mean? Anybody? So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions to keep you awake. So if you think you're just going to sit there, you're wrong. Entrepreneur. This isn't like super complicated.
When you start a business.
When you start a business, right. And then by virtue, you run that business or you own that business. Versus an employee, obviously the opposite. You don't own that business. So we have here. So as an employee, and I don't want to say either one of these are right or wrong. I'm going to say these are two different career paths. You're going to decide, hey, I want to own my business one day, or I really don't want to. And I'm going to argue there's pros or cons either way. Right? An employee, you're going to work for someone else. Now there's advantages to that, right? I'm just going to pick on electricians just because it came to mind. You can be an electrician that works for somebody else. Nothing wrong with that. That person will provide you work, that person will pay you. You will probably have a set pay that you know of. You'll probably know where you're going to work this week and next week, and somebody will settle that for you, but you work for that person. Again, the schedule and duties are basically set for you. We have an assistant that works for us. He knows his hours are 8 to 4. He knows he works every day. He knows he has holidays off. He knows what his pay is. It's not a whole lot of question marks in regard to his work right now. You will report to somebody, okay? Our assistant's name is Ryan. He reports to me and Nate, and to Ray to some extent. So Sarah, who was in here, won't necessarily go up to Ray and be like, Ray, I need you to do this. Not Ray, Ryan, man. Because Ryan doesn't work for Sarah, doesn't report to Sarah. Ryan reports to Nate and I. So He knows who it is, but he always has us to report to. He can't just decide to not show up any day, or I'm just gonna leave at 12 o'clock today because I want to. He reports to us, and he would have, I say quote unquote, because I'll expand on this later, stable income. Okay, he knows what his pay is, he knows how many hours he works, he can do simple math. I make X amount of dollars in a week. So an entrepreneur would not have some of those things, but that could be better. So an entrepreneur, we as advisors, and I don't remember the lady's name in the back, in the purple. I know your daughter's in the pink, but I can't remember your name.
Megan.
Megan. So you had asked about Nate and I explained we're kind of all advisors, and we have staff, and there's senior management. All of us advisors would consider ourselves entrepreneurs, right? We basically own our own books of business. We don't own our clients. Sounds like slave owners, but we own our book of business that we can sell one day to somebody. We decide who we work with. Some people work with business owners. Some people only work with doctors. Ray works with anybody that's alive, breathing, and conscious, as he explained. So we have some freedom in doing that. We have freedom to make our own scheduling. Last week I took some days off because it was really nice and I had a boatload of stuff to do around the house, so I took the days off. I didn't have to check in with anybody. I didn't have to ask Nate for permission. I didn't ask Anthony, who's our CEO, if I can have Tuesday off, because I work for myself. I make my own schedule. We can go on vacation. Nate didn't touch on this. Do you mind if I mention what we talked about? Last year, Nate went to Africa for a 2-week safari-ish sightseeing tour. Came back for 1 week and then left the next week on his missions trip, which is out towards Altoona. So he was off 3 weeks out of a month. But again, didn't have to ask somebody, didn't have to submit a form, didn't have to check with payroll. He just said, I'm not working these 3 weeks. Leave me a voicemail. And he left to Africa. And I dealt with him. No, I'm kidding. You are your own boss, okay? Now again, the difference between employee and entrepreneur, some people don't want to do this. Some people don't want to be their own boss. Some people don't want to be the decision maker. And you don't have to be. There's nothing wrong with that. These are just two different paths that you could go down, right? This is the electrician who owns, right, Chris Bar Electric Company, and Sam's going to come work for me. Sam just wants to show up, get paid, and go home. That's fine. I want to make the calls, set up the contract, determine what I'm going to charge these people, and I enjoy doing that, and Sam doesn't. Doesn't make Sam right or wrong, doesn't make me right or wrong. Just two different options. This is one of the big reasons people don't want to do it, right? It's unlimited, but it's also unpredictable income, right? If it's my electric company, I have to pay Sam. I can't say, sorry, Sam, I don't have money. I have to give up money because Sam has to be paid. So he's the employee, he has pretty stable, dependable income. I, as the owner, can be up or down. I can make $50,000 one year, I could make $150,000 the next year. And then I could make $60,000 the next year. And then COVID could hit and I could be unemployed. So these are the risks I'm taking as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Now coincidentally, most of the richest people in the world, and I know this isn't all about money, I sound very greedy after Nate's dissertation on glorifying God, which I would 100% agree with. Some of the wealthiest people in the world are entrepreneurs. So I just looked this up on my phone just to see who the wealthiest people in the world is. Anybody know who the wealthiest person in the world is by a long shot?
Elon Musk.
Correct. Anybody know second? I'd be surprised if you know this. That one doesn't see that.
I think it's an oil guy.
It is.
Don't know his name.
It is not him anyway.
Okay.
None of these are oil guys. So this just says, according to Forbes, 10 richest people in the world. Elon Musk, right? Does he own his own company? What does he own?
Everything.
SpaceX.
Everything. SpaceX and Tesla are his big ones. Number 2 and 3 are Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Anybody know what they started? Very famous search engine. Very famous search engine. The most famous search engine. Google. Number 4, Jeff Bezos started. Number 5, Larry Ellison. I don't know if this might be a tougher one. Started Oracle, which I think their main product is Adobe. So everyone knows what a PDF is. They made Adobe. Most of you probably know Mark Zuckerberg started or stole or made or whatever. What? Facebook. Number, we're on here, 7 maybe. Warren Buffett didn't start this company, but he grew it to the behemoth it is. Warren Buffett started Berkshire Hathaway, which is an absolute phenomenal stock and company. Steve Ballmer, he definitely didn't start Microsoft. Bernard Arnault, might know this. Ladies, anybody? So it's European, it's French. Louis Vuitton. So again, he started Louis Vuitton, high-end luxury maker, but again, started his own business. And then Jensen Huang, I guess as I say, my purchase company, NVIDIA, right? So the AI chip designer. So I say that not to say we're chasing a mighty dollar, but when you look at being an entrepreneur, these tend to be the more successful people. A lot of us that are advisors want to work with entrepreneurs because they are successful. They run their own businesses, they're very disciplined type of people, but they take on a lot of that risk, right? Steve Jobs comes to mind. When they started Apple Computer, he worked in his garage for how many years, right? He didn't work in Palo Alto from day one. Zuckerberg worked from his dorm room. Bezos started Amazon as a book rental, I think. Online book rental, you know, it's not what it, but they're willing to take the risk, put up their own capital, work 80 hours a week, and at the end result, they work for themselves, they're their own boss, they make their own schedules, and then they can end up making decent money. Now employees at Amazon and Berkshire make very good money too. So it's not like you can only make money as an entrepreneur. You can be an employee, but I just want to stress, you're probably going to go one of these two routes. Some people say, I don't want the responsibility, let me clock in, let me clock out, get my paycheck every 2 weeks, and I'm going home. Nothing wrong with that. Some people want to say, I want to do it on my own. I was an electrician for 5 years, I can probably do this myself, let me just go and do it. I'm going to start my own Sam Landis. Sam Landis Electrical Company. Sam, at least appreciate you letting me pick on you. Having a job versus having a career. When I was going through high school and college, I worked as a brick mason, and we put basically brick facades on houses. So you build the house and you sheetrock it and plywood on it, and we would put the brick on the front of the house that you'd see from the street. I always tell people, one thing that taught me is I do not want to be a bricklayer for the rest of my life. Okay? This fair-skinned person does not do well in boiling hot sun in the summer. It's hard manual labor. I know a couple other masons, and their backs hurt, and their shoulders hurt, and their knees hurt, and they can't stand up straight. And this is not what I want to do, but it was a job that I had while I was in college. It wasn't my career, it's not what I wanted to do, but it was a job. I don't know if you guys have talked to adults, or we talk to adults and say, how's it going? Oh, it's a job. They're not really excited about it, but again, they wanted to be an employee, this is a stable income, it's not their passion, not their career, but they're doing it. And I'm not trying to slander those people and put them down. But I would say there's a difference between a job and a career. A job you kind of take for various reasons, you have to, you want to, you're getting started. The job pays your bills, you're going to develop some skills. You know, if you work at Chick-fil-A and you become a shift manager, you develop management skills, right? And you would put that on your resume in the future. I've managed a team of 15 people, and I made schedules, and I filled in when people called off sick, and whatever I did. But that helps develop your resume, your skills, you gain experience, you grow your network of people, especially in this industry. People move around from one company to another, so you don't ever want to burn a bridge with that person, right? Even if this person is your Chick-fil-A manager, they may end up being a manager somewhere else where you're working later, so if you burnt that bridge, you have little to no chance of getting this job in the second place where this person is still going to be your manager. So grow your network and keep your network. All right, you never want to burn your bridge with your boss. If you ever leave the job, leave it on the right terms. Don't just stomp out and tantrum, throwing chairs and flipping tables. A lot of times your job will build towards something bigger because you will learn, as I did, what I don't want to do. I don't want to be a brick mason. I don't. My very first job was actually with a block mason, and so my second job was at Weiss Markets. Realized I didn't want to be a cashier the rest of my life either. Became a brick mason, didn't want to do that. Did an internship here, really liked it. A career is more of a profession of what you really want to do with the rest of your life now. Now, a lot of people will have several jobs that will lead them to their career. And again, jobs can teach you what you don't want to do, right? Sarah worked at Giant, and if I can steal this from Ryan, I hope he doesn't mind, he's shared this with me before. He really liked teaching music, maybe didn't pay the bills. He went to work at a warehouse. Didn't really love the warehouse, kind of limited as far as how much money he can make. Becomes an advisor, and all those things change, right? Loves his job, controls his own income. You might speak to that more and more. So a career is more permanent, right? Say you want to be an electrician. That's going to be your career. You might work for Sam for a little, and then you'll work for Chris Barr for a little, and then you'll work for these other 4 siblings, so I can't remember the last names. Is it O'Connor? Green shirt? No? Ingram. Is that? Oh, that's Ingalls, never mind. My daughter's watching, what's that show called?
Little
Yes, my daughter's watching that. So your career will be more permanent, right? I'm going to be an electrician for the next 30 years. I might work for ABC company, then I might work for XYZ company, then I might work for myself. But this is the career path I've chosen. This is the profession I'm chosen. This is the career. It's no longer just my job. This is what I'm doing now full time. And a lot of you will probably be in this job category first, and you'll be in this employee category first. And then as you work that job for months or years, you realize I do like this, I don't like it. I do like my boss, I don't like my boss. I like what I do, I don't like my boss. So I'm going to do what I like for somebody else. I think we've covered most of this. So again, this implement experience, skills, and network from previous jobs. Again, those jobs are going to teach you, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. You're probably going to get paid in one of 2 ways. There's probably one of these 2 ways. A salary versus commission. This is very, very simply put, because there can be a lot more that goes into this. A salary is I make X amount of dollars for the year, period. Commission is I'm basically paid for what I do, and I'm paid different amounts for what I do. It's most commonly associated with like sales jobs, typically. So I'm going to put both these up there because I'm going to compare these. So your salary, you're paid in exchange for your time, labor, and expertise. So if you're going to be hired, we're going to pay you $50,000 a year. You're expected to work 40 hours a week, and you're expected to do whatever this is. Just typing work and then make this charge and do that. And you're going to do it day in and day out, but you're going to get paid this. You may or may not get overtime with the salary. You're just going to get paid to do the job we gave you to do. Commission, you get paid in exchange for production, right? So I sell, widgets, and if I sell 10,000 widgets, I make $1,000. If I sell 20,000 widgets, I make $2,000. If I sell 30,000 widgets, I make $3,000. So I'm paid depending on what I did. If I want to pound the pavement and I only sell 100,000 widgets, I'll make a lot more money. But if I don't want to work that hard, I'm going to make less money. Maybe I'm okay making less money because I don't want to work that hard. Salary, you're typically going to have a set schedule, right? I'm paying you $50,000 a year. You're going to show up at 8 o'clock. You're going to stay here till 4:30. You're going to take lunch break from 12 to 12:30. That's your schedule. It's not really up for debate. It's what you're doing. It's what I'm paying you to do. Okay? Commission, you're going to typically have a lot more independence, right? Because you need to sell 100,000 widgets. If you want to sell all those on the first of the month, probably take the other 29 days off because you sold it all the first of the month. If you want to go to Africa for 2 weeks, you don't have to check with anybody. Just make sure you sold your 100,000 widgets before you leave, or you have meetings for when you come back. Your salary, you're going to have a salary within a certain income range, right? So as job XYZ, you make between $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Your first year, you're going to make 50. If you're here 10 years, maybe you'll be making 60. You might get incremental increases. You might get bonuses. Commission is going to be basically unlimited potential, right? So I've sold 100,000 widgets and I made $10,000. So what do you think happens if I sell 200,000 widgets? Somebody with quick math here. If I sold 100,000 for... Nice, good math. So if I sell more, I'll make more. Okay, now if I sell less, Nikolai, what happens? If I sell less than 100,000, I'm going to make less than $10,000. So most sales jobs are told to the employee that you have unlimited income because as hard as you're willing to work is how much money you're going to work. Now again, some people don't want that responsibility. I just want to clock in, get paid my $50,000, clock out, go home, 2 weeks vacation. And those are my benefits. I'm okay with that. And I'm not trying to say either of these is better or worse than the other. I'm just trying to explain them to you as options. Sometimes this might be a minor, well, I won't say minor. Here. Salary, kind of touched on stable income. The commission, much like an entrepreneur, can be unpredictable at times. A lot of it's built on what you're putting into it. I'm fairly confident very little of you right now care about health benefits and benefits that come with working, but one day you will. Salary sometimes maybe is more. Stable benefits, these is your health insurance options. Commission, either that's based on what you sold or you have to go buy it on your own. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because you guys are probably like, I don't know what health insurance is. Again, a salary, you're typically going to work for somebody else, right? Sam's going to come work for me. Sam, I appreciate you being a good sport and working for me so much. In exchange, I'll pay him a salary, right? If he wants a commission, generally you're going to go work for yourself. Because I have to sell 100,000 widgets, I can work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and take off every Friday. As long as I sell 100,000 widgets. So I don't care. I'm not working for somebody. I'm basically making my own schedule. If I want to work from 8 to 8 every Monday to take off Friday, I can do that as long as I sell the widgets that I need to. Commission is most commonly associated with sales jobs. We would consider ourselves in a sales industry. I do remember this, and I'll never forget this. When I was in school at Maranatha, our department chair was teaching this class. I don't know what class it was. And it was towards the end of the semester, so some of us are going to be graduating. And he said, I want to basically go online. Any of you know what monster.com is? This is probably dating ourselves. An adult, please raise your hand. No, monster.com. Okay. Any kids, monster.com. It has nothing to do with monsters. What do you think it is?
I've heard of it.
Okay. That didn't help me a whole lot, but thank you. So monster.com is a job search engine. Right now it's probably Indeed. I don't know what's on look for a job, but I don't know what else. What doesn't matter.
Career builder.
Career builder, yeah. So he brought this up, monster.com. I'm looking for business jobs. And they came up with like 536 possible jobs, right, in this zip code area. And then he put in one of the filters, business jobs without sales. And the search engine went down to like 26. So most business jobs have some degree of sales and incentivizes the person to work harder. A lot of people like to hear this. It doesn't work out for everybody, but you can have greater flexibility, control your own schedule, unlimited income. So I just said that to encourage you, just because you hear the word sales, don't automatically write it off. Oh, I'm not a people person. I don't like to talk to people. I can sell anybody anything. It's not as scary, as intimidating as you think. I didn't want to do sales necessarily. Our department chair showed me that search, and I'm like, So I can either consider sales or I can be unemployed. So I considered sales. So any questions on any of these things, these three slides, as far as being an entrepreneur versus working for somebody, having a job versus having a career, getting paid a salary versus getting paid a commission? Any questions at all? Okay, raise your hand if you're listening. Good. No, you didn't raise this. Is that a question or you're just listening?
I'll have another question.
Go ahead.
If adults are allowed.
They are.
How did you guys do through COVID as independent
Right.
entrepreneurs?
So that's a great question, and that speaks to a lot of this stuff, right? This is all the risk we're taking as entrepreneurs, right? So we're in COVID. Pre-COVID, almost every meeting we had was going to be face-to-face, right? Zoom wasn't really a thing. Nobody really did. What's that called? Skype. So it was extremely difficult. What did we do is we had some Zoom meetings, right? So we had to learn Zoom. So some of this is kind of adapting to your surroundings. We had to learn how to use Zoom. Clients had to learn how to use Zoom. Your first couple meetings were awful, right? And everyone's trying to stare. Am I on? You know, and they're this close to the camera, and you're looking up their nose, and you're like, okay, I can see you. And now you're muted. I can't hear anything you're saying. So a lot of it was that. A lot of it was we could work on some bigger projects. So we were converting some accounts from one platform to another. So we did a lot of that. Call the client, hey, I'm going to send you this is what we're doing. Need you to sign it. Some advisors I know would just drop stuff off in their clients' mailboxes, right? Because a lot of stuff is paper and pen. Hey, put this in your mailbox side, I'll pick it up tomorrow. So kind of made it happen, right? We were, I think, do you think it was like 3 months? We were probably, like, we didn't leave our houses, I think.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, for 3 months, probably that March to June timeframe. June, I'm not trying to get any type of conspiracy theory or anything, right? People are maybe loosening up a little bit. Okay, I don't mind meeting you. And we had meetings in masks, which was extremely annoying, of course. And, you know, you sweat through the mask in your suit, and I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? Maybe by 21, I would say things were probably mostly back to normal at that point. Now today, I still have more Zoom meetings than I would normally have, but I still prefer in-person meetings. So I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Yeah, I just meant financially, did people panic and want to pull their investments out or not have the funds to, you know, want to, because obviously they're paying you for the service of investing,
Sure.
or are you guys more with like larger businesses, or do you do a lot of individuals as well?
I would say the majority is individuals.
Okay.
I don't think we had a lot of panic selling. 2020, if you remember, the very beginning was a very bad beginning to the stock market. I think it lost like 30% of its value in 50 days, which is a huge problem. Stimulus checks helped, right? So people that had steady jobs, they could work remote. Now they had between $2,000, $10,000 extra dollars than they had before. What should I do with this? So we can invest it. You can bring your IRA, you start a joint account. So some of it is that. Some of it's competing with a lot of people sitting around home. I really wouldn't change the color of my walls. I should go paint these. You know, I really wanted a different kitchen. So a lot of contractor clients had a big boom because they were sitting around looking at the house, realizing what they don't like about it. So I'm going to change all this. So there's some competition for those dollars, right? Let's put these to use rather than just getting a new countertop. Trying to think what your question was, if I've answered. Did I answer your question there?
Yeah, so you managed okay. It wasn't.
We did manage okay, and the clients, thankfully, we have pretty good clients, you know, stuck with it, and I think a lot of them realized, okay, this is a problem, but it's probably not apocalyptic, and we'll get through this. We still need to have money 5 years from now. I don't know if you can think of anybody that really just totally panic sold and was like, get me out of here, I'm going to hide under my mattress. And
Those conversations happen for any number of reasons, and you might cover that a little bit when you get to the next couple of slides, but a lot of what we do is sometimes a little bit of psychology or counseling and say, okay, the first thing we must do is to not panic. I don't know about the second thing, but definitely not. The first thing is you don't want to panic. And you know, this is a whole other chapter of my memoirs that I won't regale you with, but that occurred when Chris and I had formalized our partnership about a year prior. So he's still getting, you know, a little more up to speed, but we were fortunate in some regards because we had a fairly established client base. Some of the people who were newer to the industry, and Ray wasn't with us at that point, but some who were newer to the industry, even philosophically, I still try to meet with people in person at least once, even if it might be a follow-up Zoom from there. But you know, it's a lot harder, you know, because there's a whole lot going on, whereas easier for Chris or myself to call up an established client and say, hey, we need to discuss this or whatever, at least. So we had that to our advantage. And as entrepreneurs, this was an interesting wrinkle. I think we both got PPP loans, didn't we? Yeah, so we got one of those government loans, and that allowed us to keep our assistant at the time on full salary, which meant a lot, you know, and she was able to work remotely to the extent she could. And I think maybe the lesson there, going back to the whole entrepreneurial thing, is, and what we talked about earlier, you have to be able to adapt to circumstances. When we're doing investment planning, a lot of what we'll recommend is larger established companies. And I've often used the line, okay, some of your money is in Amazon. Does anybody think Amazon is going out of business anytime soon? You know, these are people with 8 packages on their porch. Amazon's not going anywhere. Google's not going anywhere. And at the same time, you know, those are companies that not only have financial resources, but they have good leadership. And they know how to adapt when COVID hits or other current events that we'll talk about in a minute. So as entrepreneurs, again, we were fortunate in that regard, and we were fortunate we were able to find a way to direct our energies that was at least somewhat profitable, if not maybe to the extent we would have liked. But yeah, you have to be able to, that's again something you covered that we all touched on, I think, is just the entrepreneurial aspect of things. The environment's going to change. In our industry, we are heavily regulated, as one might expect. The regulations change all the time. Applications change all the time. Questions we need to ask clients. We have to accommodate that because it's the law. We can't do anything about it. You know? We have to make sure we're compliant with all of that. So, and that was a more extreme example, but I think speaks to a larger question of being flexible.
And in all fairness, right, being an entrepreneur has its risks. Some of the newer advisors didn't make it, right? You're just starting off and your goal is to meet with as many people as you can, and now you can't leave your house. So, again, that's a risk they took in being their own boss rather than going to work for somebody. And they had some tough decisions to make and rethink career choices and so forth and so on. And there's other advisors that started that and made it. You know, so it's part of the give and take. I forgot I had 2 more slides. I probably took too long. But I'll try to leave you some time here. Any other questions?
I do. I'm thinking about just with COVID, and would you encourage young people then to maybe choose a career that's essential, that there's little risk, perhaps? Following your passion to being stable.
Yeah, that's a good question. As I think about that on the fly here, I wouldn't necessarily, who's defining, what's the word?
Essential.
Essential, right? Nurses, doctors, what if I don't want to be a nurse or a doctor, right? Who would say, what if I faint on needles? I can't go into that medical field. I think industry around the globe has learned from COVID. So many things are remote now and able to be done remotely. You know, some of those nurses hated their jobs for 3 years, right? Because they were so inundated. You know, they were trying to stay healthy when they saw sick people every single day, you know. And so I wouldn't necessarily say you have to do it. I also wouldn't write it off. You know, I want more job security. Okay, I mean, people are always going to need doctors. People are always going to need dentists. You know, they're always going to need. I can make the argument about home builders too, right? Or handyman. You're always going to need someone that's going to do that. Sam's always going to have his profitable electrical business. So not necessarily. I think a lot's changed. I mean, just doctor's visits, right? You can do it on your phone now. Just an evidence of how things have changed from COVID.
Thank you.
I would add the value of having a college degree. I mean, the social meter of that changes from time to time, and people are now saying, oh, you don't really need a degree to be successful. And that can be true, and a lot of the people on the list that Chris read out may not have college degrees, but having a good, solid liberal arts education gives you a lot of flexibility professionally. And it's not something you want to dispense with right away. I'm not saying anybody in this crowd is suggesting that, but you know, get a good degree, go to a good school, get it in a field that, you know, don't get it in, you know, German anthropology or something. Get it in something that puts you on a career path. It could be medical, it could be legal or something like that. But if that's not your choice, then find a trade. There's a lot of value in the trades. The trades aren't going anywhere. We keep talking about electricians, which apparently Sam is on that career path, unbeknownst to him, as of 3 hours ago. But there will always be a need for the trades. In fact, there's probably a greater need for that now than there was even 10 years ago. So anything like that, again, nothing wrong with pursuing that, but make sure you have that ability in whatever career you pick that you can sustain through changes, whether it's, you know, events changing around you or even in your own life. You know, Chris made some career changes when he got married and bought a house. As you shared earlier, you know, that things will happen that we're like, okay, I have to make a change in direction here, but he certainly had the training and background to do that from what he had done before. So a lot of the decisions the young people are making now will maybe put you on a certain path that you have in mind, but if things change, you want to make sure you have that background so you can, you know, pivot to something else if you have to.
Olga, how long are you guys here? 4:30?
How are you guys doing?
Like if we go to 12 and then have lunch and you're out by 12:30, is that like okay?
Is that okay?
Okay. Because I didn't realize I had 2 more slides and then Ray has stuff to say too. So current events. What are some current events today? Anything you can think of. Go. What?
The war.
Where? Good. What else? Because there's another answer to that. Where?
In Ukraine.
There you go. What else? Does anybody drive? Do you pay for your own gas?
Sometimes.
Do you think it's more?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Current events.
Gaza Strip.
What's that?
The Gaza Strip. Israel.
Right. Israel and the Gaza Strip.
Charlie getting shot.
Charlie Kirk, I'm assuming, right? Charlie Kirk getting shot?
She said on his too.
Should know what that is. Is that the Pale Saw the Moon?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Space exploration, even broader, right? So how do current events fit into what we do? Affordability is the new word for inflation, okay? How many people know what inflation is? I'll give you a super simple definition. All right. Somebody that's not you or Nikolai, tell me what inflation is. More than the two, you raise your hand, so.
Come on, guys. Michael should know the definition of inflation.
Somebody's
Come
failing.
on, Jonathan.
Okay, we are not moving on until someone gives me the definition of inflation.
Isn't it like the increase in the amount of money?
I'll take it. And the purchasing power of money. So I tell clients inflation is the price of things go up over time. It's that simple. We don't need to get all the underlying factors, but what your parents or your grandparents bought their house for, you will never be able to buy a house for. Right? I think my dad bought his first house for $16,000. Today, cars cost more than $16,000. So inflation is simply things go up over time. Lots of things contribute to inflation. When there is two different wars going on, possibly three wars, if you're considering Israel and Gaza a separate war, that makes things go up, right? The price of guns, if you want to buy guns, ammunitions, factories are now redirecting what they used to make so they can make stuff for wars. Wars, energy costs, market volatility, political turmoil, whether you know it or not, there's elections. Every 4 years for president, every 2 years for Congress. I'm going to stop there because Nate will correct me on something else. So politics can be current event, cause hiccups in the market. And I'm not trying to drill down on all these current events as far as what's right or wrong, and let's have a political commentary about all of them. But how do they affect what we do specifically as advisors? How should they affect you guys? And I would say current events are a matter of perspective, right? And I don't want to diminish any of these, but I really get myself in trouble here. Won't say that either. Parents, how many people remember the global financial crisis, 2008, 2009? Okay. How many of you think about it every day? Okay. Do any of you kids know what Brexit is? It has to do with this. Anybody know what that word is? No? It's exit. So Brexit is Great Britain, hence the BR, leaving the European Union. So the news need fancy acronyms or words. They come with Brexit. It's this big deal, right? How many people think about that every day? Probably nobody, because nobody knew what it was. So COVID, well, Megan, you ruined my example because you brought it up, but COVID, again, in 2020 was a really bad year in the stock market. If you can look really closely, so the financial crisis had a huge dip. September 11th had a huge dip. Going into Iraq in 2003 had a huge dip. Greece basically went bankrupt. They left. The invasion of Ukraine. And my point is, when you look at these things from 1980 till now, is this higher here or is it higher here? This is a really easy one. Nice, good, over here. So are these very real events that happen? Yes, they are. When you look at them over the last 40 years though, they're kind of blips on the radar, right? I'm not trying to diminish the impact a war has on countries. I'm not trying to be immoral about it or anything, but when, to Megan's question, what conversations we had during COVID, we're trying to tell people this is COVID, this too shall pass, you still need to work after this, you still have to have savings after this, life will continue after this. And when you're talking to people at this small dip, it's hard to tell them, hey, just hang tight, this is all going to recover. No, it's not. It is. No, this is the worst thing ever. Okay, that's what they said on Black Monday, too. This is the worst thing ever. And that's what they said in the Depression. What is this? 60, 30, 80? 50 years earlier. This is the Great Depression. This is terrible. It took a war to pull us back out of it. The point I'm trying to make is current events, they are important. Right, where you went to war with Iran, energy prices shot up, gas is super expensive, this was a terrible idea. And then basically in 2 weeks the market made back everything it lost in the last 2 months. So again, I'm not giving a moral commentary on this, I'm just from our business perspective. If you look at things long term, or if you look back and look at history broadly, these things although they were important at the time and they're part of history, I get that, it doesn't have as big of an impact long-term. So, again, there's not a whole lot of discussion about the war in Russia and Ukraine unless you live in Russia or Ukraine. Then it's probably more important to you. But it's still going on, but by far and large, by whatever the saying is, America has kind of passed on it. I feel like the news cycle has moved on and they're on to other things, which is a new war, ironically. But I just say all that to say, don't get caught up in, oh, I can't invest this year, you know, it's going to be a bad year in the market, or COVID, this is the worst, I can't do this, I can't buy a house, I can't start a job, I can't do this. Because you look back, a lot of that isn't really even going to be noticeable looking back, right? If you retire in 30 years, you're not going to go, remember when I lost $10,000 in 2020? So now I think I am done. Any questions about anything I said? I know I covered a lot. I don't see too many blank stares, which is encouraging to me. Any questions at all about anything? Megan, you're loud if you want to. I see.
I have some, but I'll wait till the end.
Okay, that's fine. Anybody else? All right. Awesome. Right.
All right. How you guys feeling? Feeling good? Tired? Me too. We need a 5-minute bio break real quick. Bathrooms are right out there. Are we good? I think we're good. Okay. So we are, if you have to go, that wasn't your only opportunity. Get up and go. So last year we talked a lot about stocks, mutual funds, diversification. You guys were playing some variation of the stock market game from what I remember. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. This year we're going to talk about a little bit of a different financial topic, in a lot of ways related to what we talked about, but it's a little bit more historical. It's something that, you know, I'm pretty passionate about educating people on. It's a big part of what we do. But that word is retirement. So we're going to be talking about retirement because stock market, a lot of people correlate to retirement, but it wasn't always that way. It was actually, for a very long time, not correlated to what the stock market was doing. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Before, you know, so a blank slide here, I want to just kind of field responses from you guys about what comes to mind when you hear that word. When you hear retirement.
Old people.
Old people.
Nice. Honestly, I like it.
What is it? Grumpy and cranky. Okay. Can someone define what that word means?
Chris.
Whoa. Wow. Chris is not having lunch today.
Any definitions? Anyone want to try a definition of retirement? You guys probably have an idea of what it is.
It's when you make enough money to no longer have to work for the rest of your life.
You make enough money to no longer have to work for the rest of your life. Great answer. I like that definition. Anybody else? Anybody want to add? You think of golf, maybe? Florida? Vacations, cruises, Margaritaville. That's old. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that and what it means. But I do like that definition a lot of having enough money to never work again. So let's talk a little bit about the history of what this is. Does anybody know, can anybody see or know who this is?
It's a president.
It's a president, good.
It's
Good
not
start.
Thomas Jefferson.
Not George Washington, not Abe Lincoln. FDR, yes. And what was FDR known for? That's anything, I mean, the Great Depression, right? Okay. He served 4 terms, that's very unique. He led the country through a war. But part of what happened in the Great Depression is that we needed to create a safety net for the aging labor population, aging workers. Part of that was because the Industrial Revolution had completely revolutionized labor and work. And so the concept of retirement before the Great Depression, before the Social Security and all that, most people actually didn't want to retire. The assumption was that you would work until you died. And actually people were okay with that. To us, that's like mind-boggling, right? I mean, none of us want to be on a factory floor at Amazon when we're 86, 87, that sort of thing, right? So, but that was the assumption, was that you would work. But that was hard for corporations because productivity would decrease as labor aged. And so we needed a way to convince people, so to speak, to stop working and enjoy their lives a little bit. And so the Social Security Act of 1935 was designed to do that for people. It was designed to create a social safety net. You could start taking money at age 65. So Social Security is something that maybe we're familiar with. It's still with us today. Does anybody in the front here could explain to me what Social Security is? Beyond what I just said, does anybody have like I'd be very surprised, but I'd like to be surprised. Yeah?
Is it when you put money away throughout the years and government funds come in, and so eventually when you retire, you can use that?
Yeah, that's a pretty good definition. Yep. So she said, you put money away as you work, and then when you retire and you claim Social Security, the government gives you that money back. That's a very simple way to think about it, and that's a great definition. But a little bit more in detail, you're getting deduction from your wages as you work, and then when you reach a certain age, you're eligible to claim that money that you put away. So if you earn more money through your working years, your Social Security payments are going to be higher. Makes sense? Because you've put more money away. If you wait longer to claim a Social Security benefit, that payment is also going to be higher. So without getting too in the weeds or about stuff like that, Social Security was revolutionary. It changed a lot. It changed how we think about work and how we think about retirement as society. And the crazy thing is that it wasn't even 100 years ago. I mean, we had this notion that retirement's been with us forever and that it's this sort of inevitable thing, but it wasn't that way for a very long time. And Social Security changed that. So we see in the 50s and the 60s that not only are Americans getting Social Security, but through labor unions and other labor improvements, we're starting to see employer-sponsored pensions. So pension is another word that I want to see if we can put a definition to. Does anybody know what a pension is? Has anybody heard that word, yes or no? We've heard the word. Okay, so can we try and put a definition on it? Anybody bold enough to try? That's okay. A pension is very much like Social Security, but instead of the government putting money away, it's your employer. And so employers used to, this was the default option for anybody. You guys probably know people. Your parents, your grandparents may even have pensions. Teachers today have pensions. Social workers have pensions. Cops have pensions. A pension is basically a defined benefit that you get when you retire. Does that make sense? So you put money away, and then when you retire, you get a defined benefit for the rest of your life. It's a pretty sweet deal. And it takes a lot of the thinking out of the process. So in the 50s and the 60s, we see those sort of pensions come into favor, come into popularity. And so the only other problem with that is that life expectancy is increasing. And why is that a problem? Right? Life expectancy increasing is a good thing. Why would it be a problem for pensions? Yeah?
Because the employers have to continue paying these people well into like more and more years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the employers are running out of money, so they can't pay their current employees as much.
Exactly right. Everybody catch that?
I know.
Looking for a job anytime soon?
So, what's your name again?
Ellie?
Ellie?
Yeah.
So what Ellie said was that as life expectancy increases, these companies with pensions have to pay their employees more and more and more because they're living longer. And they made a promise to the employees that we would pay you for the rest of your life. So if you're living longer, the company's paying you more money, right? So I know somebody, this is my pastor's grandfather. He's 96, he retired when he was 55, and he's been collecting a pension longer than he's been working. So he's had guaranteed income from age 55 to age 96, 41 years. That's crazy. That's like an amazing thing for him, but obviously the company, they're not that happy about that, right? Because they've had to pay this guy basically a full salary for 40 years, and he hasn't worked for them. So we see pensions kind of come into favor, but there's some issues that are sort of brewing. Life expectancy being, the chief among that. So, but also in the 50s and even in the 60s too, you see prosperity in the country. And so leisure, independence, those things start to be taken more seriously because we won the war, people are coming home. The 50s are sort of seen and idealized as this golden age in America because it was very prosperous. And so those things are on people's minds now, and in the 60s too. So in the next 20 years, from the 70s to the 90s, because of the rising employer costs that we talked about, because of inflation making everything more expensive, right? As we talked about inflation, we're shifting. Companies are starting to shift from pensions to personal savings. So personal savings is basically it defines itself, but there's some other tools that came into popularity during that time. So one of them, which you guys may have heard of, is the 401k. Who here has heard 401k before? All of us, most of us? Let's put a definition on 401k, besides just personal savings. Anybody? I can do this. Up 5. Anybody? Let's hear one. Let's be bold. A definition for a 401k. Personal savings, right? We're talking about investing.
Think of the context. What are we talking about? What's it say on the top of the slide there?
History.
History of? Okay, so the context being history of retirement. What do we think a 401k is?
Probably fun for your retirement.
It's probably a fund for your retirement.
Not complicated.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So it's not a trick question. I'm not here to trick you. Yeah, it's exactly what that is. It's a 401k. It's a fund that is sponsored by your employer that helps you save for retirement. And what's unique about it is that it allows you to invest in stocks. It allows you to invest in mutual funds. It allows you to invest in bonds. And so it gives more power in some respects to the employee, because the employee can now make investment decisions. If I want to be invested in this fund, I want to be. And before, the pension was not like that. So why is personal savings coming into favor? The life expectancy of the employers are paying so much money to these pensions, they're running out of money. The government needs to revise the Internal Revenue Code. And so they create a section, the Revenue Act of 1978, it's Section 401k, which allows a company to contribute money to a retirement account as opposed to a pension. And so companies love it because they're saving so much money. They're saving so much money. And there's some tax benefits with it too. And they don't have to worry about paying somebody for the rest of their lives. What it does is it takes the focus from, we used to be able to rely on our employers to provide us a pension for retirement. We used to rely on them for that. We used to rely on the government. But now we see this shift into, I need to take care of this myself. This is something that I need to do. And so that's a unique event, obviously, in history. But we're still feeling the effects of now. So I won't spend too much time on ERISA. I would probably fall asleep talking about ERISA. But it is important because it strengthens, change the way that pensions work. Because they're still with us in some ways, but the majority of retirement planning now is 401ks, 403bs, they're basically the same thing. So yeah, here we are at 2000, so the year that I was born. Retirement has become increasingly unpredictable. So at the end of the century, in the late 1990s, we have the infamous dot-com bubble, which is basically a turbulent market event that caused a lot of portfolios to decline. And so from 1999 to 2009, at the end of the decade, we actually have another turbulent market event, the Great Financial Crisis. And so from 1999 to 2009 is kind of known, at least in this industry, as the lost decade, because there wasn't a lot going on in the stock market during that time. And so people have this idea of retirement, that retirement is unpredictable. Retirement is a scary thing that I have no idea how I'm going to prepare for it. I have no idea who I should talk to, where I start with this. I can't rely on my employer because they're not going to give me a pension. Social Security has been around, but we're not sure if that's still going to be around. So the funding concerns for Social Security. And so retirement now has become a very much do-it-yourself kind of thing, which is good in some ways, but also overwhelming for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to do it themselves. And that's where we add value as advisors. We help people prepare for retirement. And we'll see what happens in the future. We'll see what technology does to affect our concerns and that sort of thing. We'll see what happens with Social Security. But it's become increasingly unpredictable, and of course life expectancy continues to increase. And so the question is, how much money do you need to retire? Because that's what we define retirement as. So once you have enough money to stop working, so how much money do we actually need to retire? So I want to actually ask you guys that. I want to field some responses. Like, how much money do you guys think we need to just retire? So if you retire at 65 and you live 30 years, how much money do you need to live 30 years without working? Could you even guess? Would it be $1 million? Great. Would it be 5 million? Would it be 100,000? 100,000 seems too low. Too low, right? So the question of how much do you need is $1 million question, really. No pun intended, but more is always better, of course. But that question has puzzled people for a while, because if you have $1 million, how much can you take out each year safely? Because you don't want to run out of money after 30 years, right? Because if you take out 10% at most, assuming that the market just stays flat for 10 years, you can take out 10% of $1 million for 10 years, right? We're getting into some math here. I will try to keep it high level. But this stuff is fascinating to me, so I'm like, no promises. So if you take 10% a year of $1 million, that's $100,000 a year. Times 10 is $1 million. So you run out of money in 10 years if the market did nothing. So if you take out 10% of your portfolio, the market has to increase 10% for you to have a net zero. Does that make sense? So the question of how much money is a very delicate system, a very delicate puzzle to solve. Maybe it's 5%. Maybe we only want to take 5% of our savings a year. But that means that we have to expect a net return of 5% every year to get back to zero. So we do a lot of retirement planning for clients for that. This slide says sequence of returns, and this is I think, fascinating exercise. Unfortunately, there's a lot of math here. But essentially, a lot of people think if I just get $1 million, then I'm all good. And I can just take out a certain percent, and then the capital gains are going to make up for it, because I know that the stock market over time is just generally positive, and it's easy to predict what the stock market's going to do in a long period of time. And that's true. But if you have two identical portfolios, so you guys probably can't see the numbers. If you have two identical portfolios and you have the same period of time, you have the same average return during those periods of time, We have 4.08, maybe it's easier to look at that screen. 4.08 and 4.08. Those are the average returns on these portfolios. It's the same for both. But at the end of these 30 years, this is at negative $966,000, and this is at $479,000. You ask me, how is that possible? How is it possible to start with the same amount of money, the same average return over 30 years, but have two completely different outcomes? It's because of the sequence that those returns happen. What we did is that in each of these scenarios, the returns are the same average, but they are reversed. So, yes, so this 37 and 37, they're happening in a different order, and that means that the value is different. So I bring this up not to confuse you, not to bore you, even though it may be confusing or it may be boring. I bring it up because retirement is a complicated puzzle that we help clients solve. And I want to educate you guys on this because there's a lot of doom and gloom going around, especially in younger generations. People that are my age, born after 2000, born before 2000. There's a lot of like, I'm never going to be able to retire. I'm never going to be able to do it. Has anybody ever heard anybody say that before? Adults, kids, you've heard people say, I'm never going to be able to retire. Things just got too expensive. I'm never going to have enough money. Do we hear that? We hear that sometimes, right? Everything's so expensive. Well, what we do as advisors, we reject that. We reject that notion. Our job here is to give people hope for the future, not just hope that I'm going to be protected if something happens or that sort of thing, but hope that I can actually achieve the goal that I want to achieve, which is retirement. And unfortunately, even though retirement has had a bumpy history, it's still a very attainable goal through good work, through habit formation, through disciplined investing, through smart decision making. Retirement is possible for you guys. I don't want you guys to listen to anybody that says it's not possible to retire. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. It's just somebody else's slide, but did I bore you too much with that? Was that interesting? Who has questions on that? What stood out? Anything stood out to you guys? You want me to explain sequence of returns again? No, I didn't. What's the question?
This is somewhat off topic, but a lot of how you define retirement was like going on cruises and going on reading and stuff. Yeah, that sounds like it would cost a lot of money to do. So why can't retirement just be like, oh, volunteering or?
It's a good question. Did everybody hear that? Why can't retirement be, why does it have to be cruises and golfing and margaritas and all these things? It doesn't. Retirement, and I think we have a unique perspective on this as Christians too, because you can retire from working, especially if you have a manual labor job, if you're a roofer, you may be forced to retire. You may not just not be able to work. But you never retire from serving God. And so that's the point of like, well, why can't we volunteer? Why can't we do this? The point of retirement is to have the freedom to do both. Because it's not all just like, well, I'm going to retire now and then I'm going to go right back to work and start volunteering and start a new business and all these things. You also have to take vacations. You also earn some leisure, right? So the point is not saying, me as the advisor saying to clients, you need to take vacations now, you need to do this, you need to volunteer. The point is to have the freedom to do both. And then the client can make the decision of the balance between the two. Good question. Any other questions?
Historically, we all have this number in our minds, age 65 is like the retirement age, and that's when Medicare starts and some other things. And in our business, when we talk to people in their 60s, 65 is not old. 65 is not old, especially if you're in relatively good health. You could live, as Ray said, another 20 or 30 years. That is not unreasonable. And when we're talking to a married couple, we will say, at least one of you will live into your 90s. That is statistically accurate. So we have to plan for a much longer time horizon. But with that in mind, sometimes I'm going to just stop working and play golf at 65, that doesn't work anymore. Many people are working well into their 60s. I have a couple of clients in their 80s that are still working, not necessarily because they have to, but they're like, hey, what else am I going to do? I can only play golf or watch reruns so many days out of the week. It allows them to, do other things. I was on an archaeological dig in Israel 9 years ago, and one of the gentlemen on the trip, and I don't know how old he was well into his 60s, so, and he talked about how he'd had a job, and then he retooled himself for retirement, and now he goes on these archaeological expeditions to Israel, and he knew stuff about the site we're at and the area around it comprehensively. It's just something he had decided to focus on in retirement. And there's no, you probably heard this, some of the adults might have, there's no biblical framework for retirement. We don't hear about anybody retiring. You would serve until you passed away. Obviously in the modern world we have to take that into account, but you do want to transition to a point where I'm no longer dependent on my job and I can spend time with my family, or I can volunteer, or I can serve in the church somehow, or whatever it is. And some of the busiest people we know are people that are quote-unquote retired. So that's something to keep in mind. The paradigms have changed over the last 50, 60 years. I just want to go back to this slide real quick. On the life expectancy, and I found this on the internet, so we know it's true, right? Everything on the internet is true. That's what Abraham Lincoln said. So, but it said, you can't really read it, but in 1900, life expectancy was under 50. Under 50. I'm 56, so I'd be long gone 126 years ago. And then you do see that accentuated drop there. In the early years of the Great Depression, there were some problems there. Life expectancy dropped to around 40. And then around the time Social Security is introduced in the mid-30s, life expectancy was around 60. So that's a huge impact on the planning going forward. And even Social Security. You can start Social Security under normal circumstances as early as age 62. In my mind, that is ridiculous. 62 is way too young to start collecting Social Security, and we will generally encourage people to wait as long as they can. There's various reasons for doing that. But when Social Security was established, 62 was old. It's not old anymore. 65 is not old. 70 is not old. So again, that's just as one of the things that we've had to adapt to in our industry, even over the 20 years that Chris and I have been in it. It's just longer life expectancy, pensions going away, and putting more responsibility on us. Lunch is on the way?
It will be at 5 closer to noon.
Okay, so we got
So stall.
stall. All right.
Trivia, Nate.
Trivia, all right.
Oh, boy.
Who are the two presidents born in Pennsylvania?
I know Buchanan was one of them.
Buchanan was one of them.
Another B.
One of
Biden.
Biden. Yeah, very good. Good group here. All right. Who was the only president who was also president of a labor union?
Roosevelt.
Trump.
In my lifetime. No, not Trump.
In your lifetime. Jefferson.
Jefferson. Ronald Reagan was president of the Screen Actors Guild. Heard of him?
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. But yeah, so we'll maybe come back to that. Just to kind of tie things up here, wrap it up as we finish here. And I'll elaborate on one other point that occurred to me since we apparently have some time until food gets here. But the people we talk to, and some of you who are taking notes might want to make a note of this, but the people we talk to, maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and into retirement, that are relatively comfortable, that are in relatively good shape, that feel good about where they are. There's a number of common denominators which are not that complicated. They learn to live within their means. That's extremely critical. I've dealt with clients that are like, well, yeah, we just can't seem to pay down this $20,000 credit card bill we have. We're paying like $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. I said, well, how much are you adding to it every month? That's maybe why you can't get out of debt. So living within your means is crucial. Starting to save at an early age. We can set up a Roth IRA or any kind of savings account really, but if you have income, even as a teenager, you can start saving money for retirement that is never taxed again. Even if it's $50 a month, start saving now. And then if you go to work for a corporate setting where they have a 401k, especially if they have a match, take advantage of that. Get all the free money you can. Do that right away. Don't ever say to any of us, oh, I can't afford it. If you have a job, you can afford to save money. You can absolutely afford to do that. So again, living within your means, start saving early. invest in your employer plans, take advantage of whatever benefits they offer you. And saying this more pertinent to the adults, but some of you will probably be parents someday, invest in your kids. Not just financially, I mean, that comes with the territory, but just those of you as students who are in this consortium, this group here, it's because in large part your parents have decided to make this investment in you and taken time away from what other things they could be doing, whether it was having a full-time job or earning money somewhere else. They have made this investment in you so that hopefully your education by the time you get through high school is a little bit above what you might have seen in a public school setting. I'm quite sure it will be. And they've made that investment in you, whether it's their time or finances, helping you with different things along the way. Investing in your kids pays huge benefits to you as you plan to retire, because you don't want to be 65 and thinking of retirement and have a 42-year-old living in your basement who can't seem to get off roadblocks or whatever the thing is at the time. So those are, again, a couple of things. Living within your means, saving early, using your employer benefits, investing in your family, investing in yourself, of course, being a part of organizations, being a part of your church or organizations you support, being part of things that are larger than yourself. A number of you have gone on mission trips or done volunteer work, things like that. The people who do those things, and this is not complicated, the people who do those 5 or 6 things generally tend to be in good shape when it comes to retirement. So definitely, that's one thing. You guys have anything to add, but that's something I think we see in all of our, 50 plus, people getting ready to retire. It's usually a combination of those factors. So, just again to wrap things up. So we mentioned the 3 I's earlier, and again, finding a career of significance and finding one. What I've added to that, what is something of eternal significance? And the 3 I's again: impact, income, and independence. And we're not saying this career is right for everybody. It's certainly, you have to fit a certain profile and have a certain desire to deal with the fluctuations of entrepreneurship. But we were able to leverage all 3 of those to our advantage, where we can do other things outside of work. Now, Chris mentioned the trip I took to Africa. It was somewhat ministry related, somewhat safari, and so forth. But every year, Chris's church has VBS. And they need volunteers. They do it during the day, so they need all the volunteers they can get. So Chris is able to take that week and help volunteer at VBS at his church. He's done that every number of years. It allows him to work with his kids as well, especially when they're younger. The income we make, that allows us to support organizations financially, not just our local church, but other organizations or ministries that we support or we believe in. And the impact on things, and just one thing as simple as if we get a call that one of our clients has passed away, that will almost always jump to the front of the line of our priorities for that day, because that is the most important thing we will do, is handle the death claim process and handling the transition of assets, paying out life insurance. That is almost always going to be our highest priority. If I go back to my desk here and I have a voicemail in that regard, and I hope I don't, that will become my first priority for this afternoon. I'm going to return that call and set up the next step in that process. And as tragic as that can be, and as difficult as that can be, and 10 years ago I had a very difficult situation involving 2 of my clients who were martyred as missionaries in Jamaica. That was very challenging. As challenging as it was a very fulfilling time that I could actually bring some good news to some people and help them through that process. So the impact we have in that regard is very important, and the impact we have just in helping people get to that stage when they can retire. And even after 20 years in the business, I find it still particularly rewarding. I mean, we'll talk to anybody, certainly, but I find it particularly rewarding working with younger people in their 20s and 30s and just getting them off to a good start. Even if it's a small life insurance policy or a small amount being saved here or there, or setting up plans for their children as they have young children, that's very rewarding. It may not be the most lucrative part of our practice, but it means that we're setting people on the right course financially. So that's the impact, income, and independence. And then just a couple of bullet points we hit on. Don't become distracted by current events. Certainly you want to know what's going on in the world, but the bigger picture is, the economy will usually work through those things, and we as advisors, when we're helping people out, say, okay, yeah, we may not be happy with what's going on in one thing or another, we get that, but that's no excuse for you to stop investing or to depart from the strategy that we might have helped you set up. I mentioned, I'm a big fan of history. History is a branch of study that's part of the humanities. I'm sure I've heard that, the description. We hear about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. History, English, writing, things like that. That's part of the humanities. And why do they call it the humanities? It's because the humanities are what make us human. That's what sets us apart from everything else. Science and technology, chemistry, math, that's the same whether it's in, anywhere in the world, any other planet. You go to Jupiter, the chemistry will be the same. Obviously, the environment's different, but the chemistry is the same. 2 + 2 is always 4, no matter where you are. Humanities are what set us apart. And understanding our history and where we came from is extremely critical in framing up our worldview and framing how we approach our careers. And in this year, again, I'm digressing a little bit, but the food's not here yet, so you got nothing else to do. This is our semi-quincentennial, right? Anybody know what that is? 250 years. And I'm old enough, and I'm probably older than everybody else here. I remember the bicentennial 50 years ago. I remember it well. It was on a Sunday. But anyway, 250 years. And so you will see, on whatever media outlets you choose, or maybe books you read, or movies you might rent, documentaries, you'll see a lot of focus on the American Revolution. And it's really important we understand that, and I do not recommend the Ken Burns documentary. That's a whole other story there, but there's plenty of good resources out there. And you read that and you study the American Revolution, it gives some context to, okay, why do we have the Constitution written the way it is? Why do we have the Bill of Rights written the way it is? Why do we specifically have these rights in the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, and so forth? Why was that set up? Well, you look at the context of the American Revolution, that defines a lot of who we are and who we were then and who we are today. So very important that we understand that, and obviously the history since then. You will not waste your time learning more about the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence. One of the best books I ever read is called Miracle at Philadelphia. It's not about the Phillies or the Eagles, it's about when we wrote the Constitution in 1787 and the whole mechanism that came about with the founding fathers led at the time by James Madison, although he certainly wasn't alone in formulating the Constitution, which has remained largely unchanged in about 250 years. We've had a few amendments, but largely the Constitution is about the same as it was written back then. So very important we understand history, both in terms of the context of current events and our overall history going forward. Be a good steward of your time and resources. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Save early. Be wise with your money, live within your means, and be wise with your time. Your time is a valuable asset as well. And ask for help when you have questions. Certainly the internet has some resources on it. And you could probably go onto a website and set up a Roth IRA pretty easily on your own. And if you feel confident doing that, go right ahead. But there are professionals in all lines of work that can help you if you have questions or concerns, and maybe help you see some opportunities you might be missing otherwise. And that's what we offer as advisors. We're happy to talk to anybody, whether it's just kind of an entry-level type thing, like how do I start saving money, or is it something along the lines of I'm a little bit older now, I'm in my 40s, what do I need to do to make sure I'm on track for retirement, or any other goals that I have. In my case, I just had a grandchild. We cannot sell life insurance to anybody under 2 weeks old, so as soon as he gets his social, you're on that, right?
I'll call you.
Yeah, call you. I will be the last one he calls. I think he's capable of doing that himself. But don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's still, in my industry, many years into it, there's a lot of things I don't. I'm learning new things every day, and I'm very grateful I have partners like the ones here and others in our industry who have helped us out. So that is all I think that we have. Any questions? Megan has a few.
I have a few.
Questions, comments,
What about you
feedback
guys?
for any of us?
Okay. Could you give us a range for the kids, just steering away from the personal answer, but like a range of what financial analysts and what you guys do make from low to high for salary annually? And then another question is about your son who majored in music. I'm assuming because of you being his father and him working on Saturdays, he knew a lot about this language of finance, but it's pretty impressive that he can slide right in with no background, formal education at the college level in finance, business, investing, and how much can you speak to, like, in this generation, do you believe that as long as a kid is sharp enough and willing to be trained in any area that, you know, they can be, as long as they have that degree that gets them in the door, or is that very unlikely?
Okay, so that was like 4 or 5.
I know.
Let me try
I was trying to get
parse that out.
Well, can I answer the first one?
Go ahead.
So there's the beautiful thing, like, about the income
Yeah.
is that there's no ceiling. So as far as range, like, pick a number. I mean, like, there are people at our firm, and we're not in this boat, but there are people at our firm who are making well into 7 figures a year. So $1 million plus a year. That's probably an exception to the rule. I mean, you can take the average and maybe the median. You know, I couldn't even give you a number. It's hard to say. The other thing is that there's no floor. So you said, what's the minimum you make? Well, there's 0, basically, or negative, really. You pay for all the gas and the tolls. So yeah, I mean, it's a wide range. And it depends on how you set your practice up, because there are some practices that will only talk to people making $800,000 a year plus. We're not in that. Those aren't the kind of, I mean, we're happy to serve those people as well, but that's just not the way we've set up our practice yet. So if you're talking with those people, yeah, you're going to be making, and maybe you're more focused on managing wealth, maybe you're more focused on financial planning, maybe you're more focused on qualified plans and insurance and premium financing. So there's a lot of different ways to do it.
We will find that those that are making, the highest earners, probably 2 things in common. They've been doing it a while. They've built up a large client base that has a lot of renewable income based into it one way or another. And most of them are working in some kind of team or partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So that they have, and we have that on a kind of a moderate scale. But you know, our team is very strong in that we have a complementary set of skills, and you know, we bring in business, we share it, and so forth. So those are probably, I guess, the 2 biggest building blocks. And I would just add, as intimidating as it can be, not having a set salary, we have a whole lot more control over that. And in my previous job, and we've all worked at a salary. You know, Chris was going through the differences, you know, between this and that, and we've all done the other side. I mean, I worked as a salary position for 15 years in various roles, and I'd have to wonder, okay, at the end of the day, am I getting a bonus? Am I going to get an increase at the end of the year? And at the time I started in this industry, I was still our church treasurer, and I was in a budget meeting. I may not have been treasurer at that point, but it doesn't matter. I'm in a meeting, and we were talking about giving the pastor a salary increase. Yes, it does happen from time to time, believe it or not. And we were all in agreement on that, but the one gentleman, I remember saying, well, you know, we're going to do this, but we have to be careful how we present it, because a lot of the people in our congregation haven't seen salary increases themselves. And again, having done this for a couple of years, I thought, well, that was just so foreign to me. If I'm not making enough money, well, I need to reorient how I'm doing my business. I maybe need to ramp up my activity. I need to make some internal changes, talk to management, talk to someone like Sarah, who can maybe help direct my resources a little bit better, form good partnerships, and things like that. So it does have its own set of challenges, but having that level of control over your income is something I don't think any of us would trade in. That was your first question. Did we cover any of the others?
Well, just briefly about your son not having any degree in the financial world, and you can speak to it too. Like, do you think that was just because of your dad pulling you in, or is that literally possible that someone could learn all that they needed to learn by being an intern and teachable and
So, can I comment on this first? So Nate has no background in finance either. His background is political science.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a bachelor's in business administration, which is super vague. The top guy in this office didn't even go to college. There's a couple people, I mean a few, like not a lot, that have like financial planning majors from Kutztown or Penn State or something. I think a lot of that's, so I think a lot of finance, right? Pick the word finance. People don't understand, right? People think I'm gonna be an investment banker, JP Morgan Chase in New York City and make $250,000 my first year. Like, it's not happening. Those are super selective jobs that you probably know somebody getting in there. I think a lot of what we do is training on the job, the way Mass does it. A lot of people come in and do insurance sales first. You probably did it for at least a year, if not longer than that. And then as he has bills, so he can't afford to starve, right? So slowly he starts getting investment licenses, which lets you opens up another line of business to you. But a lot of that is on-the-job training. So Sarah referenced all the training set up. There's too many in my opinion, but there's at least one every Monday and Friday, and I think every Wednesday, and I think every Tuesday afternoon and Thursday morning too, so it becomes excessive, but.
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, federal holidays. So a lot of it is on the job, because a lot of, I don't do any accounting work, right? But a finance degree is gonna have probably at least 2 semesters, not 4 semesters of accounting. And I abhor accounting, right? I know what a debit and credit is, and that's enough for me. So, and it's really not applicable to me talking to my average client that I know what accounting is, and because I'm not doing their taxes for them, they're probably not even doing their own taxes. So I do think a lot of it is on-the-job training. There's plenty of successful people here that don't have business degrees, some that don't have any degrees. I think probably the biggest characteristic is teachability or coachability, whatever you want to say. Second, personality. Third, maybe second, work ethic. I'm firmly convinced Nate has outworked most people in this office. I don't think he'll mind me saying he's probably not the smartest, but he has outworked most people in this office. He has said that. That's the only reason I've said that. But when you start off making calls on Saturday mornings, which nobody wants to do, right? But it's necessary to do, and he's done that. And one of the top guy, the rest doesn't have a degree. He's probably the only guy that's outworked Nate, and he's just outworked himself to high 6-figure salaries repeatedly, if not higher. So most of it's on the job. I don't think college necessarily preps you for it any better than not going to college. I'm not sure that a humanities degree is any worse than a CFP degree. A CFP degree, not the actual certification itself. But so I don't know if that helps at all, but I would say most of it's on the job, really.
Well, we're always hiring. So if anybody wants to take a crack at it, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to try. There's I can speak to the experience thing. So, the skills that are needed to succeed in this business are not, can I do differential equations, or can I run a 5-minute mile, or can I run, which I obviously can't. The skills in this business are much more qualitative than they are about quantity or numbers or anything like that. So the industry term, I think, is soft skills. So soft skills are much more of an indicator of success in this industry than if you went to Wharton or Penn. So that's what I would say to that. I think why this appealed to me and why I thought I would give it a try is because I had some of that entrepreneurial aspect with music. I didn't, I liked the freedom that I had when I was doing music, and I really want to give that up. And I also have a built-in mentor, and so it's not me standing here and saying, well, I did all these things right, and I have all this great character, and that's why I'm successful, and why I'm here 2 years later. It really is like you stand on the shoulders of giants too, and so if you can get plugged in, I think that goes for any job. If you can find somebody who can mentor you and bring you up in a way that sets you up for success, I think that's much more valuable than what GPA you got. But at college, we would have coffee with the president every now and then. It's a small enough school where you could do that. And you just have people over at his house, and he said this quote that it always stuck with me. He's like, he's the president of this university, and he's gone through many different jobs, many different interviews. Nobody's ever asked him what his GPA was. Nobody. He told us that, and we believe him, we trust him. Like, And that blew my mind because we think about these numbers, we think about grades, we think about GPAs, or we think about setting ourselves apart through some sort of medium like that, or what your SAT score is, right? That's a big thing. There's a kid in my church who wanted to get a perfect SAT score, and then he got 1350, and he was so depressed, he was so down about it, and I was like, dude, 1350 is like,
The numbers go that high?
they go to 16.
Oh, wow. Whatever.
So we have all these things, right? We tell ourselves, like, if I could just get this number on this test, or if I could just get this grade. But I think the skills that you need to succeed in this business are not correlated to those. They're correlated to how hard you're going to work after you've been rejected 50 times. After it feels like nobody wants to work with you, it feels like nobody trusts you, are you still going to pick up the phone, are you still going to dial? That's why I think athletes succeed in this business. A lot of people here had a background in athletics of some kind, because they're used to the persistence and the resilience, getting in a gym, training. And let's not forget too, this job does come with certifications that you have to get. So there are like actual barriers to entry of, can you pass a test? Can you, and not just any test, a test that's designed to make you fail. So there's like a Series 6, there's a Series 7, there's a Series 66, there's a SIE, there's a life and health exam, and then Nate has 6 different designations that all require different studying habits and all these things. So I think that's an exhaustive answer, hopefully, but maybe it brings up more questions too. Maybe that, so I don't know, but I hope that helps a little bit.
When I was getting into the industry 20 years ago, I was in my mid-30s, and they gave me like this, what you might call an aptitude test. And he answered the questions, and it came back. There's like 9 categories, and I was subpar in 7 of the 9 categories. I still have the file on my desk, just to remind myself and keep myself humble. And at that point, however, MetLife would basically hire anybody who could sign their name, didn't have a prison record, and I could do both. I did not have a prison record, at least in this country. And so they brought me in, and then the other recruiter was very diplomatic about, what happens in Africa stays in Africa. But I knew one thing going in. Again, I'm in my mid-30s, I have a young family at the time, had a mortgage. I was not afraid to work. I was not afraid to work, and I had written some books in the past. The first book I wrote was rejected by 26 publishers. The next one I wrote actually had a contract, and then was sabotaged by a bunch of lawyers. But I understood persistence, and I understood work. And I think if you have that amongst anything else, that will help you get through any number of challenges. And you will have challenges in your career and anything else. And one thing I'll close on, because the food's here and I will no longer have your attention, but a mantra we've sometimes used, or a paradigm almost, 3 things: mindset, systems, and ownership. And kind of speaks for themselves, but mindset is critical in anything you do. And in our business, you have to be prepared to deal with rejection. You have to be prepared to deal with things that don't go as planned. But if you say, hey, I'm doing this as a career, I'm going to develop this, I'm going to get through these challenges and setbacks and move forward, and that's true in any profession. And you have to be prepared, as I mentioned, you're not going to come in here and make 7 figures right away, unless you have some very rich relatives who are going to do these huge policies and investments with you. But if you stay persistent and you deal with the challenges and you build things up over time, again, the people who've been here the longest are generally the ones that are going to be in the top producers and top wage earners. Anything else? That was a lot, and we appreciate your patience waiting for the food and everything else, but we'll stick around for a bit. Are we pretty much ready to go there?
We are.
Would somebody like to pray for our lunch?
None of these 3 boys, obviously.
Another stampede. Hey, I'm good. I had a protein bar. Who would like to say the blessing? Who's the oldest of the students?
Sam the electrician. He's an electrician.
Sam, could you lead us in prayer?
Sure. God, thank you today. Thank you for coming over here and these guys about business, financial, and retirement. Give us food that will bless our bodies and we'll get nutrients. Give us the day and all these things in Jesus' name, amen.
So the ladies will go first, as usual. Ellie, the genius, can go first. Then Sam can go first of all the guys. All right.
So funny that he had taken on Santa out of fish and about to cook Santa. Sam was actually